Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 66, Chapter 66, Luoyang paper is precious. Chapter 66, Luoyang paper is precious. A loud noise echoed from the center of the caravan, its sound waves rapidly reaching every corner. The look of confusion on everyone's faces was immediately replaced by clarity. Ah, my eyes, my eyes. Pained screams began to resonate within the caravan, each voice louder than the last. Many within Chen Fei's carriage had their hands over their eyes, seemingly on the verge of gouging them out. It was thanks to the old man's warning that their reactions had been slightly delayed, sparing them from losing their eyesight. What's happening? Some in the carriage shivered, unnerved by the feeling of being utterly controlled. Most importantly, they had all forgotten what they had just witnessed that triggered such reactions. Recollections of a straw hut appeared, but no one remembered what ensued. The screams outside the carriage persisted as the guards of the Immortal Cloud Caravan began inspecting each carriage for problems. Meanwhile, they cautioned everyone not to look outside carelessly, else they would bear the consequences. That's bizarre. There's something off about a straw hut appearing in the valley out of nowhere, the old man sighed. When encountering such issues, it's best to see nothing and hear nothing. Our safety is generally guaranteed with the Immortal Cloud Caravan's protection. Thank you for the warning earlier. Everyone expressed their gratitude to the old man, who casually dismissed the thanks. He had intended to save himself. Had he been bewitched by the evil, losing an eyeball would have been only the first step. Subsequently, other horrifying things might have occurred in the carriage, leading to an actual disaster. The continuous screams from outside left everyone in a state of fear. Meanwhile, Chen Fei, seated in a corner, furrowed his brow. When the others were looking at the thatched hut, he chose not to. After experiencing a few evil entities, he had nearly summed up his own strategy. However, when someone attempted to poke their eyeballs, Chen Fei's mind was slightly affected. Although the clear heart formula circulated automatically, it failed to immediately dispel the abnormality. In other words, whether he viewed the entity or not, he would still be affected, only the intensity of the impact varied. With regard to the numbness in his arm, he was only starting to feel it. Chen Fei glanced at the old man. He suspected the old man possessed something that could restrain the entities, making him immune. On the other hand, although the clear heart formula was still effective, it seemed unable to handle slightly stronger anomalies. However, this was understandable. After all, it was merely a commonplace cultivation technique. Fortunately, we chose the Immortal Cloud Caravan. Otherwise, we would have been doomed. Qi Defeng admitted, still shaken by the recent events. This evil phenomenon had probably only recently emerged. Otherwise, even the Immortal Cloud Merchant Band wouldn't have been caught off guard and almost suffered a catastrophe. The Immortal Cloud Caravan skirted the mountain valley, taking a detour before returning to their original route. Alarmed by the evil event, the Immortal Cloud Caravan appeared to have quickened their pace. Their usual routine of taking 3 to 4 rest breaks a day was reduced to 2, and each break was considerably shorter. They wasted no time in continuing their journey. The 8th and 9th days swiftly passed. In the evening, a cheer erupted from the entire caravan. They had caught sight of the Immortal Cloud City. However, as the old man explained, what they saw was not the Immortal Cloud City but a smaller city adjacent to it. They still had a day's journey before they could truly enter the Immortal Cloud City. Seeing the outline of the city in the distance brought a smile to the old man's face. Being here meant safety. The incident with the monsters 2 days ago was still fresh in his memory. It was only in the city that he could feel more at ease. After another hour, the entire caravan finally entered the city. Some people began to depart from the Immortal Cloud Merchant Band. Not everyone was heading to the main city. Chen Fei's destination was naturally the main city. Since the Immortal Cloud Sword sect was near the main city, most people were also heading there. The Immortal Cloud caravan rested in the city for a day. Chen Fei utilized this time to explore the city. Chen Fei could clearly sense the city's vitality. Just the number of entertainment places, such as brothels, greatly exceeded that in Apricot Fen City. At the same time, the prices of pills and weapons were significantly lower compared to Apricot Fen City. As long as there were sufficient talents, the price of such materials would decrease. In contrast to Apricot Fen City, where marrow tempering realm martial artists were seen occasionally, here in the city, Chen Fei could vaguely sense the presence of many such individuals on the street. Chen Fei recalled the Immortal Cloud Sword sect's requirement for martial artists to reach the marrow tempering realm below 20 years of age and pondered silently. Only in such a cultivation environment could the Immortal Cloud Sword sect dare to make such a demand. Chen Fei couldn't help but think of Pingying County and the rebel army. The rebel army was just a small group among the many rebel soldiers. Their target was a small county like Pingying County. Reflecting on it now, Chen Fei wondered how many incidents must have taken place in this dynasty for such a vast scale of rebel soldiers to run rampant. It was a turbulent era indeed. The next morning, the Immortal Cloud Merchant band set off again. The old man in the carriage had already left. He believed that while the main city was more prosperous, the pressures of life were also greater. It was better to live in a nearby smaller city, which was more comfortable. Anyway, he was already at this age and had no intentions of going to the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. Shall we rent a courtyard in the city and continue selling medicine when we arrive? Chen Fei asked Qi Defeng during a break. Chen Fei was determined to continue selling pills. After all, it was a quick way to make money, and he was counting on this to save some cash. Of course, he had to be more careful when selling medicine this time. Ideally, Chen Fei would be able to join the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. Then, he would probably have no issues using the sect's name to avoid trouble. I'll certainly continue selling, Qi Defeng answered with a smile. At his age, no sect would accept him. If Chen Fei's medicinal pill business was done well, Qi Defeng would also be able to live a comfortable life. In the evening, Chen Fei caught sight of the Immortal Cloud City. One look at it left him speechless. He had never imagined that he could see such a magnificent city in this world. It was hard to believe that it had been constructed by human hands. The city gate guards were all at the bone tempering realm, and the sergeant was above the marrow tempering realm. As for his exact realm, despite the help of the clear heart formula, Chen Fei was unsure. The sergeant's aura was cold, and it was evident that his hands were stained with a lot of blood. After saying their farewells to the others in the carriage, Chen Fei and the others found an inn. The price was high, and the food was not cheap either. However, the two of them were mentally prepared. 2,000 taels a year. Chen Fei and the others were brought to a courtyard by the innkeeper the next morning. They were quite satisfied with all aspects, but the price was frightening. Chen Fei initially planned to do as before, to live humbly, but he quickly realized that this was entirely impossible. The cost of living was high, but this was excessively so. Chapter 67, Chapter 67, Immortal Cloud Sword Sect. Chapter 67, Immortal Cloud Sword Sect. It's not that I don't want to give you a discount, but there have been too many people coming to the Immortal Cloud City recently. If you wait a few more days, this courtyard will probably be rented out, the Tooth Man chuckled. In the end, Chen Fei still managed to rent the courtyard, albeit at a reduced price of 1,900 taels per year. Even if Qi Defeng tried to negotiate, the rent couldn't be lowered any further. After purchasing some basic furniture, the two of them officially moved into Immortal Cloud City. Qi Defeng went to gather information about medicinal herbs in preparation for future pill refinement. Meanwhile, Chen Fei explored the city, visiting various shops and restaurants. In addition to learning about the prices of pills in Immortal Cloud City, he also inquired about the recruitment process of the Celestial Cloud Sword sect. Half a day later, Chen Fei returned to the courtyard with a troubled expression. "What's wrong?" Qi Defeng looked at Chen Fei, feeling puzzled. "It's nothing major. I just heard some news about the Immortal Cloud Sword sect's disciple recruitment process. They've changed the rules again," Chen Fei whispered. During his time in the caravan, an old man had mentioned the rules for accepting disciples, which were set many years ago. Over the years, especially with the increasing influx of people into Immortal Cloud City, the method of accepting disciples in the Immortal Cloud Sword sect had changed almost every month, but the general principles remain the same. "What are the new rules?" Qi Defeng asked curiously. The last time he heard about the requirement of reaching the marrow tempering realm before the age of 20, he was already shocked. He had been cultivating all his life and had only reached the bone tempering realm. The marrow tempering realm was still far beyond his reach. The fact that the base requirement was the marrow tempering realm was already a heavy blow to his self-esteem. The new rule for the first 2 months is that if you haven't been exposed to martial arts before the age of 13, you can join the sect if you pass the test based on your innate ability and comprehension. If you are accepted as a disciple, you should reach the bone tempering realm by the age of 15 and the marrow tempering realm by 18, Chen Fei explained, looking up. Qi Defeng was momentarily stunned, thinking he must have misheard. Then, his mouth hung open wide. The original rules were already stringent enough, but now he realized that he was still far too weak. The new rules were even more demanding. Even in Immortal Cloud City, it's incredibly difficult to reach the marrow tempering realm before the age of 18, Qi Defeng couldn't help but ask. A person's martial arts talent, apart from factors like family background and having martial artist parents, would mostly depend on innate talent. In a city like Immortal Cloud City, genius martial artists would undoubtedly be far superior to those from rural areas. However, reaching the 5 realms of body tempering and the marrow tempering realm was no easy task. Yes, that's why most of those who join the Immortal Cloud Sword sect are still young. Of course, Chen Fei nodded. By training them from a young age, they will be more loyal and adaptable compared to those who bring their existing skills to the section. Has the Immortal Cloud Sword sect been accepting many new disciples recently? Qi Defeng asked, wondering if the sect had tightened its recruitment criteria due to the influx of people. Yes, many people have sought refuge here, Chen Fei nodded, sighing slightly. With so many choices available, the Immortal Cloud Sword sect naturally selected the cream of the crop. Rumor has it that the recruitment rules might change again this month. Despite being a behemoth, the Immortal Cloud Sword sect still needed instructors and resources to distribute. Expanding the sect so rapidly had likely exhausted them to some extent. However, this made it more challenging for older martial artists like Chen Fei to enter the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. This month, the Immortal Cloud Sword sect would begin accepting disciples in 5 days. There were also rumors that the Immortal Cloud Sword sect might change their recruitment frequency from once a month to once every 3 months or even half a year or a year. Over the next 2 days, Chen Fei and Qi Defeng gathered information in Immortal Cloud City. Qi Defeng found a reliable source of medicinal herbs, while Chen Fei extensively explored more than half of the city, especially areas with a high concentration of shops. Compared to Apricot Fen City, the prices of medicinal pills in Immortal Cloud City had dropped further. Light spirit pills were typically sold for 10 taels of silver, eternal floating pills for 25 taels, and flying ascent pills for 95 taels. The price decline was minimal for flying ascent pills since they were consumed by those in the visceral tempering realm, making them relatively more valuable. Unfortunately, Chen Fei had yet to master the art of refining them. As for pill formulas, Immortal Cloud City had a wide variety available. Even the formula for light spirit pills wasn't too expensive. The formula for eternal floating pills was still relatively confidential. If one wished to learn, One could join a medical hall or a medicine shop and sign a long-term contract to receive training. The requirements for flying ascent pills were even stricter. Immortal Cloud City also had street stalls set up by itinerant cultivators, which were larger in scale compared to Apricot Fen City and bustling with activity. A wide variety of peculiar items were sold there, with over 20 vendors selling medicinal pills, leading to fierce competition. This indicated the considerable number of people and talented individuals who had flocked to Immortal Cloud City from various places. Only those skilled in alchemy could survive in such a competitive environment. On the morning of the third day, Qi Defeng brought a bag of medicinal herbs to Qianfei filled with the ingredients for light spirit pills. Due to the simplified version of eternal floating pills, refining light spirit pills would provide valuable experience points. Qianfei estimated that by putting his full effort into refining light spirit pills, he could perfect his proficiency in eternal floating pills in about a month. Moreover, since he had just arrived in Immortal Cloud City, it would be more appropriate to start by selling light spirit pills. Light spirit pills were common in Immortal Cloud City, and while the profit margins were decent, it wasn't an item that would make others envious. The city's market dynamics were different. By controlling the quantity, Qianfei could test the market to some extent. Of course, it would be ideal if he had a strong backing, such as the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. However, Qianfei was unsure if he would have the opportunity to join the sect under the current conditions. On the morning of the fourth day, Qianfei handed Qi Defeng 100 light spirit pills. Some of them were refined in Apricot Fen City and stored in Qianfei's space grid. There were also some preserved food items from Pingying County in the space grid, which Qianfei didn't consume, keeping them as emergency rations. At noon, Qi Defeng returned with a smile on his face. Qianfei looked at him in surprise. This big city is truly different. A person tested the authenticity of our pills by pricking them with a needle and ended up buying all of our light spirit pills, Qi Defeng said with a smile, handing over the silver notes to Qianfei. Qianfei was also pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect Immortal Cloud City to have such advanced methods of testing medicinal pills. In the afternoon, Qianfei dedicated his time to refining elixirs and practicing swordsmanship and archery. He couldn't deny feeling nervous about his visit to the Immortal Cloud Sword sect the next day. If he could enter the sect, it would mark a significant milestone in his martial path. However, considering the current requirements of the Immortal Cloud Sword sect, Qianfei couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The standards were incredibly high. Early in the morning on the fifth day, Qianfei woke up and bid farewell to Qi Defeng before setting out. Many others in Immortal Cloud City were also awake early, filled with excitement as they gathered near the foot of the mountain where the Immortal Cloud Sword sect was located. They chatted animatedly, their faces brimming with anticipation as their gazes intermittently drifted toward the sect's gate on the mountain. Chapter 68, Chapter 68, Thunderbolt Sword. Chapter 68, Thunderbolt Sword. Qianfei listened attentively to the discussions around him, confirming that more than half of the people present were from other cities. Among them, besides those who aspired to become disciples of the Immortal Cloud Sword sect, most were refugees like Qianfei. Here they come. Soon, a group of figures rushed down the mountain and swiftly stood before the crowd. Qianfei's eyes narrowed as he observed their movements. Their speed was astonishingly fast. The movement technique that Qianfei took pride in might not be weak, but it couldn't compare to the agility displayed by the newcomers just now. Judging from their calm postures, it was clear they hadn't exerted their full strength. Let's skip the pleasantries. If you wish to join our Immortal Cloud Sword sect, you must possess exceptional comprehension abilities. Those below 13 years of age follow my junior brother up the mountain for the test. Those below 15 years old and who have reached the bone tempering realm also follow my junior brother. Those below 18 years old and who have already attained the marrow tempering realm, follow me for the test, Fan Xiu announced loudly, pointing at her two junior brothers standing beside her. These are the rules. Let the testing begin. Wait a minute. What about those over 18? Someone shouted in surprise, realizing there were only 3 rules and Fan Xiu was about to ascend the mountain. The sect currently does not accept anyone over the age of 18, Fan Xiu replied with a shake of her head. You mean we don't even have a chance to be tested? What about testing our comprehension and aptitude, as we used to? Many people grew anxious, including Chen Fei, who glanced at Fan Xiu. The rules have changed. Today is the day, Fan Xiu stated firmly. This is unfair. We've come all this way and aren't given a chance, some protested. I've only started practicing martial arts recently, but I've trained my body diligently for a year. In a few more months, I will definitely reach the bone-tempering realm, another argued. Yes, we've just started learning martial arts, but it doesn't mean our talent and foundation are lacking, voices of discontent echoed through the crowd. Almost half of the people were shocked, and the scene grew chaotic, with many expressing their indignation. Silence, a thunderous shout reverberated, rendering everyone deaf-end. Those with lower cultivation levels even stumbled and fell to the ground, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the sound. The uproar immediately ceased. Luck is also part of the martial path. Coming into contact with martial arts late means you're unlucky. Now, those who meet the requirements proceed up the mountain for testing. The rest of you are dismissed. Fan Xiu scanned the crowd with an imposing aura, causing many to lower their heads in submission. Chen Fei and Fan Xiu exchanged a brief gaze, but it went unnoticed by the others. Chen Fei took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. Life is filled with hardships. Chen Fei had envisioned various scenarios regarding becoming a disciple, but he never expected that the immortal Cloud Sword sect wouldn't even grant him a chance to be tested. As Fan Xiu had emphasized, luck was indeed a factor in martial arts. In other words, luck was a part of life. Sometimes, when there was no opportunity, there simply wasn't one. Those who met the requirements began queuing to ascend the mountain for the test, while the others who fell short refused to leave, clinging to a glimmer of hope. Many thoughts raced through Chen Fei's mind, but ultimately, he shook his head. The immortal Cloud Sword sect's stance was crystal clear. There was no chance for an older martial artist like him. Wine Immortal Inn. These are the nearby sects where you can seek apprenticeship. Although they may not compare to the immortal Cloud Sword sect, they have a long history. The Tooth Man handed Chen Fei a piece of paper. Chen Fei skimmed through it, discovering 3 sects listed. The paper provided brief introductions about each sect's location and its unique cultivation techniques. You've prepared quite well, Chen Fei remarked, surprised by the Tooth Man's perceptiveness. He had only stopped by the inn for a moment, yet the Tooth Man instantly saw through his intentions. His business acumen was remarkable. It's all for the sake of earning some money, the Tooth Man chuckled. How much do I owe you? Chen Fei asked. 10 taels of silver. I'll share everything I know once you pay, the Tooth Man replied, his expression turning serious. Please have a seat. Chen Fei called over a waiter and ordered a cup of tea for the Tooth Man. The Tooth Man beamed with delight. The transaction was completed. An hour later, the Tooth Man departed. Chen Fei watched the bustling street and furrowed his brows. The Tooth Man possessed a wealth of information, even if it was publicly available. Nevertheless, it saved Chen Fei considerable time. The Big Dipper Tower, Long Rainbow Sect, and Sunken Water Pavilion were the names of the 3 sects. According to the Tooth Man, these 3 sects possessed similar strengths, each with its own distinctive cultivation techniques. Apart from these 3 sects, there were smaller sects in the vicinity of Immortal Cloud City as well. However, they were considerably weaker. Some of them had enjoyed glory in the past but lost their inherited cultivation techniques or encountered other setbacks. The Sunken Water Pavilion exclusively recruited female disciples, making it irrelevant for Chen Fei. The Long Rainbow sect focused on spear techniques, which wasn't particularly appealing. Additionally, they only accepted those below 13 years old and didn't admit disciples who already possessed their own martial arts skills. The Big Dipper Tower's ascetic monks were forbidden to marry, as their cultivation technique required them to maintain their virginity. Marrying would disrupt their cultivation progress and, at worst, cause a regression in their cultivation realm. After listening to the descriptions of these three sects, Chen Fei felt disheartened. It became apparent why these three sects couldn't compare to the Immortal Sword sect. The restrictions imposed, and their cultivation techniques paled in comparison. How could they possibly match up? I didn't expect to be unable to join my first choice, then my second choice, and now I'm left with the third choice, Chen Fei murmured to himself. He hadn't anticipated this outcome before coming to Immortal Cloud City. The Primordial Sword Sect. I'll give it a try. Thoughts of the Primordial Sword Sect flashed through Chen Fei's mind. It possessed a respectable heritage, comparable to the Sunken Water Pavilion and the other two sections. The only drawback was that no one had managed to attain great completion of their most renowned cultivation technique, Thunderbolt Sword, in many years. Consequently, the sect's overall strength and top-tier combat prowess were slightly weaker compared to the other three sections. Moreover, the current sect leader seemed to struggle with management. What connection does the Thunderbolt Sword have with the Thunderous Sword Force? Chen Fei had asked the Tooth Man previously. The similarity in names intrigued him, especially considering the fame of the Thunderous Sword Force in the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. I don't know, the Tooth Man was about to shake his head, but when he saw Chen Fei produce another 5 taels of silver, he immediately changed his tune and whispered, I heard that the founder of the Primordial Sword sect deemed the Thunderous Sword Force to be extraordinary. In response, he created the Thunderbolt Sword to counter it. But the Thunderbolt Sword has certain flaws, making it extremely challenging to cultivate. I truly don't know, the Tooth Man chuckled, refusing to divulge further. Chen Fei finished his wine and left the restaurant. 2 hours later, Chen Fei arrived at the entrance of a mountain gate. Today was also the day for the Primordial Sword sect to recruit disciples. However, compared to the bustling scene at the Immortal Cloud Sword sect, the number of people present was considerably smaller. Nonetheless, there were still a handful. 15 minutes later, Chen Fei possessed a waste token and a manual on their cultivation technique. He had paid 100 taels of silver for these items. Chen Fei now held the status of an outer sect disciple of the Primordial Sword sect. By diligently cultivating the sword technique within the manual and reaching its peak within half a year, he would have the opportunity to truly become a disciple of the Primordial Sword sect. Chen Fei gazed at the manual, his expression filled with complexity. It felt as though he had entered a large martial arts club. Chapter 69, Chapter 69, Primordial Sword. Chapter 69, Primordial Sword. Have you entered the palace? Qi Defeng asked hurriedly when they returned to the courtyard of Immortal Cloud City and saw Chen Fei. The Immortal Cloud Sword sect didn't give me a chance, so I went to the Primal Star Sword sect. Chen Fei shook his head and briefly explained what had happened that day. At the same time, he showed his waist token of the Primordial Sword sect. It has become stricter, Qi Defeng commented. Upon hearing that Chen Fei was unable to join the Immortal Cloud Sword sect, Qi Defeng felt pity for him. After all, it was the most powerful sect in the vicinity. The sect offered the best choice in terms of cultivation techniques and backing. There are too many people, Chen Fei said regretfully. His previous target was the Immortal Cloud Sword sect, and he had even learned a few moves from them. Learning the moves of the Immortal Cloud Sword sect made Chen Fei understand their power. It was a pity that they were unwilling to accept him, and he had no choice. The status of the two parties was not equal. Primordial Sword sect? I've heard of it. Is there something called the Great Thunderbolt Sword in their inheritance? Qi Defeng asked. Great Thunderbolt Sword? Isn't it called the Thunderbolt Sword? Chen Fei asked in surprise. Why was the thunderbolt sword called by such a name? Why did they add the word great to it? I heard it from people outside, Qi Defeng replied, also somewhat puzzled. Chen Fei opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. Why did this great thunderbolt sword sound like it was intentionally suppressing the thunderbolt sword? After spending a few hours refining the light spirit pill for today and handing it over to Qi Defeng, Chen Fei took out the secret manual given by the primordial sword sect. Now that he had joined the primordial sword sect, Chen Fei needed to consider how to obtain an even stronger cultivation technique inheritance in this section. The primordial sword sect appeared to be a large martial arts school, and it had its benefits. As long as you paid, they would accept you. Once you showed enough talent, you would be immediately drawn into the true inheritance. Primordial sword. That was the name of the secret manual. Chen Fei spent 2 hours reading through the Chui Yuan sword, and he was a little surprised by what he discovered. Although the primordial sword sect accepted anyone who paid, they didn't scam people. The primal sword was the basic sword technique of the sect, and though it was the foundation, its power was not weak at all. Furthermore, it could perfectly integrate with the sect's inheritance. From Chen Fei's current feeling, this primordial sword was only slightly weaker than Chen Fei's fire vein sword. One must know that the fire vein sword was formed after Chen Fei fused many sword techniques. Besides the fact that the primordial sword was weaker, the sword technique that Chen Fei had obtained in Pingying County was indeed a little weak. It was almost overtaken by a beginner sword technique. Discovered cultivation technique. Do you want to spend 80 taels of silver to simplify the primordial sword? The beginning sword is being simplified. Simplification was successful. Primordial sword. Chen Fei looked at the simplified result with surprise. It wasn't that wielding a sword was difficult, but it was rare to see a successful simplification like this. Chen Fei went to the courtyard with his long sword. Chen Fei had an idea when he encountered the goo worm in Apricot Fen City. After arriving at the immortal Cloud City, he specifically bought some medicinal herbs and mixed them into a potion that could directly wash away the remaining aura on the sword. There was also a large bottle in the space grid for future use. Chen Fei performed the fire vein sword with his hands and quickly immersed himself in practicing the sword technique. After some time, Chen Fei stopped and let out a breath of turbid air. Cultivation method, primordial sword, master 102/1000. Looking at the information on the interface, Chen Fei couldn't help but smile. Compared to mindlessly slashing the sword, it was naturally more interesting to directly practice the sword technique. Moreover, he could learn new things from the past. At this rate, if Chen Fei was a little more diligent, he would probably be able to cultivate the set of primordial sword to the realm of perfection in a few days. At that time, he would be able to apply to enter the inner section. Wouldn't that be too obvious? Chen Fei had thought about this problem initially. After all, the primordial sword sect had given him half a year. However, did he have to waste his time and wait there just to be mediocre? It was just a set of introductory sword techniques. Chen Fei's goal was to obtain a stronger cultivation technique as soon as possible so that his strength could rapidly increase. As long as his cultivation realm increased fast enough, even if danger came, he would have enough strength to resist. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. In those 7 days, Chen Fei refined pills in the morning, cultivated inner strength techniques in the afternoon, and practiced the bow technique. The rest of the time was spent cultivating the primordial sword. There were no problems with the sale of pills for the time being. Chen Fei was also more cautious, and he controlled the number of pills he sold each day to below 100. It could only be said that Immortal Cloud City was relatively large. They either didn't care about the profit of those medicinal pills, or they were still investigating Chen Fei's background. In the long run, there would still be people who targeted Chen Fei and Qi Defeng. After all, they earned a few hundred taels every day, which was quite impressive. Thus, Chen Fei wanted to join the Immortal Cloud Sword sect and settle this once and for all. Now that entering the Immortal Cloud Sword sect had failed, the Primordial Sword sect could be their new backer. However, being an outer sect disciple was far from enough. Chen Fei needed to become an inner sect disciple or even a true disciple. Early in the morning, Chen Fei arrived at the main gate of the Primordial Sword sect. He had already cultivated the Primordial Sword to great completion. Chen Fei would be taking the assessment today to officially become a disciple of the Primordial Sword sect. "Are you here to take the test?" the deacon disciple asked when Chen Fei handed over his waist token and looked at the carved numbers on it. He looked up at Chen Fei in surprise and said, "Are you a beginner?" "Yes," Chen Fei nodded. "It seems that you have learned the Primordial Sword before." "All right, follow me," the deacon disciple nodded. Chen Fei's expression changed slightly. After obtaining the Primordial Sword, quite a number of people immediately came to take the test. But thinking about it, it was normal. The Primordial Sword could be learned with money. The Primordial Sword sect had never intended to keep it a secret. Perhaps the Primordial Sword sect was purposely casting a wide net to recruit disciples. If many people were interested in the sect, they could learn it well first and then come over. This way, the half-year deadline was even omitted. Chen Fei followed the managing disciple and enjoyed the scenery of the Primordial Sword sect before arriving at the Hidden Dragon Palace. "Senior brother Yang, this junior brother Chen is here for the advancement test," the executing disciple said, cupping his hands and speaking in a low voice. "Someone else is here again? Recently, our sect's population has grown a lot," Yang Chuanzhen said, closing his eyes to rest. When he heard the voice, he raised his head to look at Chen Fei, and a warm smile appeared on his face. "It's all thanks to the sect leader's leadership," the managing disciple hurriedly smiled and said. Yang Chuanzhen nodded, stood up, and walked in front of Chen Fei. He sized him up and said, "The Primordial Sword is the foundation building sword technique of my Primordial Sword sect. It focuses on foundation and practice. Junior brother Chen, have you thought about taking the test today? If you fail the test, you'll have to wait another 3 months. If you don't pass in that 3 months, you'll have to wait for a year. Please enlighten me, senior brother," Chen Fei said, cupping his hands seriously. "All right, please step onto the martial test stage," Yang Zhao waved his right hand, and Chen Fei stepped onto the stage with his right foot. With a faint smile, Yang Quanzhen's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Chen Fei. Chen Fei's eyes lit up slightly when he saw Yang Quanzhen's movement technique. It was a good technique. If he could practice it after entering the inner sect, it would definitely improve Chen Fei's movement technique. "Junior brother, please use your full strength to unleash the Primordial Sword." "Don't worry," Yang Chuanzhen said. "I won't hold back," Chen Fei replied. Yang Chuanhen had at least the cultivation of the marrow tempering realm. Unless Chen Fei used Sword 5, he wouldn't be able to hurt Yang Chuanzhen at all. Chapter 70, 4 Peaks and 3 Lineages. Chapter 70, 4 Peaks and 3 Lineages. Stepping forward, Chen Fei approached Yang Quanzhen. The long sword in his hand flashed as he aimed for Yang Quanzhen's chest. "Good!" Yang Quanzhen exclaimed. With just one sword move, he could already discern Chen Fei's foundation in sword technique. Yang Quanzhen effortlessly deflected Chen Fei's attack with his sword, and in return, he launched a backhand attack using a sword move from the Primordial Sword. Chen Fei's expression remained unchanged as he instinctively blocked Yang Chuanzhen's attack with his own sword. In just a few breaths, Chen Fei and Yang Quanzhen had already exchanged dozens of moves. Their exchange was intense and evenly matched. Watching from below the stage, the deacon disciple's initially relaxed expression gradually turned serious. His seriousness, however, wasn't directed toward Yang Quanzhen but rather toward Chen Fei. Although Yang Chuanzhen had suppressed his cultivation of the bone-tempering realm, his understanding and mastery of the primordial sword surpassed that of ordinary martial artists. Normally, it would only take a few sword strikes to determine the stronger combatant when facing cultivators of the same level. But as they fought, Chen Fei appeared calm and composed, making the deacon disciple question his own eyesight. Regardless of how much he had practiced beforehand, without the guidance of the sect, it was extremely difficult to cultivate primordial sword to such a high level. Among the outer sect disciples who took the test, those who had grasped the primordial sword to such a degree were as rare as phoenix feathers and dragon scales. With a resounding clash of swords, Chen Fei's figure slid back a few steps before finally stopping. His long sword trembled slightly in his hand. "You win. I was only using the power of the marrow-tempering realm," Yang Quanzhen said, looking at Chen Fei with a smile. If he had continued suppressing his realm, Yang Quanzhen suspected that he would have been injured, which would have been quite embarrassing. "Congratulations, junior brother Chen," the deacon disciple waved his hand and said with a smile. "Junior brother Chen, please follow me." The managing disciple's attitude was noticeably gentler. An inner sect disciple was already considered a true member of the primordial sword sect and held a higher status than an outer sect disciple. "Thank you for your guidance," Chen Fei said, cupping his hands toward Yang Quanzhen. He then followed behind the managing disciple, leaving the hidden dragon palace. Yang Quanzhen stood in his original spot, his smile gradually fading and his face turning cold. His previous enthusiasm was completely replaced by a different demeanor. After registering his name and receiving a new waste token, the managing disciple led Chen Fei around the primordial sword sect, introducing him to the various facilities. "When our primordial sword sect was at its peak, we had 4 peaks and 3 lineages. The sect's signature technique, the primordial sword scripture, was a technique refined from the 4 peaks and 3 meridians. Its power was unparalleled and shocked the world," the managing disciple proudly shared while they walked. Chen Fei listened quietly, not saying a word. "However, in recent years, we have faced significant challenges. Although the sect has survived, some of the inheritances have been lost," the deacon disciple's voice became somber. "Which lineage can I learn?" Chen Fei asked. "It's too early to say which lineage. You have to wait until you become a true disciple of the sect to be exposed to the true inheritances," the deacon disciple smiled. Many new disciples desired to learn profound cultivation techniques, but without passing a test, the sect would not grant them access to top-notch inheritances for fear of entrusting them to the wrong person. "What about me?" Chen Fei inquired. "According to the order, the sect has already arranged for Martial Uncle Feng to be your master. From now on, Martial Uncle Feng will be responsible for your cultivation," the managing disciple explained as he led Chen Fei to a courtyard. "Is Martial Uncle Feng here? I would like to pay my respects," the deacon disciple called out from outside. "What is it?" A figure silently appeared at the door. When he saw Chen Fei, he furrowed his brows slightly and asked, "Recently, the sect has already assigned 18 disciples to me. I can barely handle them alone. Why are they assigning another disciple to me now? Martial Uncle Feng, please calm down. This is the sect's arrangement. I have no authority to question it," the managing disciple replied with a bitter smile. "Humph." Feng Xiaopu grunted in dissatisfaction and took the paper containing Chen Fei's information. Feng Xiaopu's frown deepened when he saw Chen Fei's age and bone-tempering realm cultivation. However, his expression eased slightly as he observed Chen Fei's performance in the advancement test. "Show me the primordial sword once," Feng Xiaopu instructed, his gaze fixed on Chen Fei. "Yes, master." Chen Fei nodded and raised his long sword, demonstrating the primordial sword technique on the spot. Having already cultivated the primordial sword to perfection, every move and style had become instinctual for Chen Fei. As he performed, his sword technique appeared elegant and agile, embodying the essence of the primordial sword. Feng Xiaopu's furrowed brows gradually relaxed as he watched Chen Fei, a hint of surprise gleaming in his eyes. Even if Feng Xiaopu were to use the primordial sword technique that Chen Fei had displayed, his execution would only be average. The frustration he had felt when the sect assigned more disciples to him earlier dissipated at this moment. Feng Xiaopu didn't know how long Chen Fei had spent cultivating this sword technique, but seeing how he could grasp the primordial sword to such a level, it would be much easier for him to cultivate the other sword techniques of the section. However, Chen Fei's cultivation was still too weak. He had only just entered the bone-tempering realm at his age. If he wanted to make progress in the future, his prospects seemed slim. All right, that's enough. Stop, Feng Xiaopu said after a while. Chen Fei sheathed his sword and stood to the side. From now on, I have many disciples under my guidance, and I can't always be available to guide your cultivation. Most of the time, you'll have to work hard on your own. If you encounter any difficulties, don't hesitate to come and ask me, Feng Xiaopu instructed. I understand, Chen Fei replied, cupping his hands. Feng Xiaopu was quite satisfied with Chen Fei's performance and nodded slightly. He led Chen Fei to the study and handed him a secret manual. Take this secret manual and study it for a few days. Return it to me afterward. By the way, come to my place tomorrow morning. You can also meet your senior brothers then, Feng Xiaopu informed. Thank you, Master. Chen Fei expressed his gratitude and received the secret manual with a happy expression. He had finally obtained a cultivation technique. Although this secret manual was not the top inheritance of the primordial sword sect, Chen Fei was no longer a rogue cultivator. He didn't need to search for cultivation methods everywhere. With the sect's guidance, he could focus on cultivating. 15 minutes later, Chen Fei bid farewell and left. Feng Xiaopu watched Chen Fei's departure and shook his head slightly. Due to Chen Fei's display of the primordial sword, Feng Xiaopu couldn't help but assess Chen Fei's aptitude. However, he couldn't directly discern it. Feng Xiaopu was surprised to learn that Chen Fei had reached the bone-tempering realm. With his current age and foundation, even if his comprehension was slightly stronger, his future prospects on the martial path would be limited. Chen Fei returned to the room assigned by the sect and closed the door with anticipation. He looked at the secret manual in his hands. Origin Connection Technique. Chapter 71, Chapter 71, Great Strength. Chapter 71, Great Strength. Chen Fei spent 4 hours reading through the secret manual in his hands several times. Afterward, he rubbed his dry eyes and set the manual aside, lost in thought. The Origin Connection Technique was a cultivation method practiced by all inner sect disciples of the primordial sword sect. Only by mastering this technique could one compete for the true inheritance of the primordial sword sect. The Origin Connection Technique consisted of 5 stages. Currently, Chen Fei only possessed the cultivation steps for the first stage. However, even this initial level was on par with the cloud swallowing art. Only Chen Fei's shocking swallowing art was slightly stronger, particularly in removing the pill's restrictions, where the Origin Connection Technique fell short. Nevertheless, each stage of the Origin Connection Technique grew progressively more difficult yet more effective than the previous one. Upon reaching the 3rd level, the technique would automatically manifest a unique characteristic, similar to the benefits gained from perfecting the clear heart formula. Today, Chen Fei realized that the measure of a good cultivation technique lay in the number of characteristics it produced. These characteristics were far from mere embellishments but rather elevated the power of the technique to a higher level. For instance, the clear heart formula's characteristic of bullet time significantly increased Chen Fei's strength. Upon reaching the 3rd level of the Origin Connection Technique, Chen Fei would acquire the first characteristic, tremendous strength. The second characteristic, iron bones, would manifest at the 5th level. However, Chen Fei only possessed the cultivation method for the first stage. To obtain the subsequent stages, he had to cultivate the first stage to perfection. The requirements were strict, and the treatment he received was incomparable to that of the primordial sword. Sitting cross-legged, Qianfei attempted to channel his inner strength and follow the circulation route of the origin connection technique. Initially, he encountered some confusion, but after an hour, Qianfei was able to completely circulate the first level of the origin connection technique. Cultivation method, origin connection technique stage 1, 1/1000. The proficiency level is not divided according to the entry level. Could it be because the cultivation technique is divided into 5 levels? Qianfei was surprised as he observed the interface. He had assumed that each level of the origin connection technique would be similar to before. The current display was somewhat unexpected. Perhaps it was due to the incomplete version of the origin opening technique that Qianfei had obtained. If he had the complete set, the cultivation progress would likely range from beginner to perfection. Fusing the shocking swallowing art. Cultivation method, origin connection stage 1, 693/1000. Qianfei felt a surge of comprehension flowing into his mind. After the fusion, most of the shocking swallowing art was discarded, retaining only its essence, such as pill refinement and rapid circulation. The primary focus remained on the origin connection technique, so even the name of the cultivation technique remained unchanged. A cultivation technique has been discovered. Do you want to spend 1,000 silver taels to simplify the first stage of the origin connection technique? The price keeps increasing. Qianfei couldn't help but grin upon seeing the cost. Commencing the first stage of origin connection technique. Simplification was successful. Origin connection technique stage 1 - shocking swallowing art. With the success of the nesting doll, Qianfei only needed to cultivate the shocking swallowing art to its peak to complete the first level of the origin connection technique. Then, he could proceed to cultivate the second and third levels. Along the way, Qianfei returned to Immortal Cloud City and explained the situation to Qi Defeng, instructing him to come to the primordial sword sect to collect the pills. Although it caused Qi Defeng some inconvenience, it ensured greater safety. When others saw Qi Defeng going to the primordial sword sect daily to obtain pills, they became curious and conducted further investigation. As an inner sect disciple of the primordial sword sect, Qianfei now possessed a strong backing that could intimidate smaller factions. However, his identity as an inner disciple alone was far from enough for complete stability. Qianfei needed to establish connections on another level, such as with his current master, Feng Xiaopu. Rushing such matters would be unwise, though. Qianfei still did not fully understand the type of person Feng Xiaopu was. Mishandling the situation could attract trouble rather than benefit. Therefore, careful consideration was necessary. The next morning, Qianfei arrived outside Feng Xiaopu's courtyard and noticed a crowd already waiting there. As many people saw Qianfei, they couldn't help but glance at him curiously. "Are you the new disciple of Master? What's your name?" Someone suddenly approached Qianfei and inquired. "I'm Qianfei. I just joined the sect yesterday and was fortunate enough to be accepted by Master," Qianfei replied with a smile. "So, you're the junior brother? My name is Luo Jun. You can call me senior brother Luo." Luo Jun's face brightened. He was no longer the youngest member. "Hello, senior brother Luo," Qianfei said, somewhat bemused, not understanding the reason behind Luo Jun's excitement. "Ha ha ha, greetings, junior brother. If you have any questions in the future, feel free to ask me." Luo Jun patted Qianfei's shoulder and assumed an older brotherly stance. "Thank you, senior brother Luo." Qianfei shook his head and chuckled. Luo Jun seemed to be an interesting person. After a short while, Feng Xiaopu appeared before everyone and introduced Qianfei to the group. Then, he began explaining the crucial points of cultivating the origin connection technique. Perhaps due to his attention to Qianfei or the presence of numerous new disciples, Feng Xiaopu primarily focused on elucidating the contents of the first stage of the origin connection technique. The origin connection technique is our fundamental cultivation technique. Without a stable foundation, progressing to the subsequent levels will be futile. I hope you all understand. 2 hours later, Feng Xiaopu stood up and addressed the group. We will follow Master's teachings, the disciples replied promptly. The rest of you may leave now. Return in half a month. Qianfei and Guo Linchen, please stay behind. Feng Xiaopu gestured, and the other disciples left while respectfully cupping their hands. Master, junior brother. Guo Linchen, a burly man with tiger-like eyes and a curly beard, greeted Qianfei. Qianfei just joined the sect, so he likely has many questions regarding cultivation techniques. Master is usually occupied and finds it challenging to provide individual guidance. If Qianfei has any inquiries, please do your best to answer them. Feng Xiaopu looked at Guo Linchen, quite satisfied with his progress. Among the disciples he had taken in, Guo Linchen had the highest cultivation level, already at the peak of the marrow tempering realm. With further training, he could attempt to break through to the visceral tempering realm. Moreover, Guo Linchen had already cultivated the origin connection technique to the 4th level and comprehended the characteristics of great strength, making him qualified to guide the new disciples in their cultivation. Master, don't worry. I will take good care of our junior brother, Guo Linchen said with a sincere smile. Feng Xiaopu nodded and turned to Qianfei. Remember, the origin connection technique values both talent and diligence. Spend more time contemplating the profound aspects of the cultivation method. When you encounter something you don't understand, seek guidance from others. Only through such efforts can you progress further on the path of martial arts. Thank you for your guidance, Master. Qianfei lowered his head, knowing that Feng Xiaopu had accepted him wholeheartedly and didn't treat him as an outsider. However, he didn't hold high expectations for himself. After all, his talent and age posed significant hurdles that ordinary individuals couldn't easily overcome. Chapter 72, Chapter 72, Such a Bully. Chapter 72, Such a Bully. All right, if there's nothing else, you can leave, Feng Xiaopu said, nodding, and returned to his room. Little junior brother, focus on your learning. If you have any questions, feel free to come to me anytime. Even if you don't have any problems, you're welcome to visit me, Guo Linchen said with a simple and honest smile. He patted Qianfei's shoulder firmly and turned to leave. Qianfei cupped his hands and planned to return to his place. According to the time, Qi Defeng should have arrived by now, so he could go and receive them. Junior brother, over here, I'm over here, a voice called out as Qianfei walked out. He turned around to see Luo Jun. Senior brother Luo, Qianfei said, looking at Luo Jun, who was hiding in the tree crown, with a puzzled expression. Just now, did Master ask you to seek eldest senior brother's help if you encounter any difficulties in cultivation? Luo Jun jumped down from the tree, looked around, and asked with a smile. Qianfei nodded, not understanding what Luo Jun was implying. I was in the same situation before. Remember to bring something with you when you visit eldest senior brother. No one told me about it back then, and I was ostracized by everyone for a long time. It was really uncomfortable, Luo Jun said mysteriously. Qianfei's eyebrows twitched slightly. A gift? Would he be shunned by everyone if he didn't bring one? How much is required? Qianfei asked curiously. The minimum is 100 taels. If it's less than that, eldest senior brother will tell you that we're all fellow disciples, and giving it to him would only drag him into trouble, Luo Jun replied, sounding pained. Qianfei narrowed his eyes. A greeting gift of 100 taels? Does this mean he would have to pay a fee every time he seeks guidance on cultivation techniques in the future? Does Master know about this? Qianfei asked in a low voice. I'm not sure if Master is aware of this. When I gave it to eldest senior brother, he initially refused for a long time before reluctantly accepting it, saying he would keep it for me, Luo Jun replied, giving Chen Fei a knowing look. Chen Fei's eye twitched slightly. The term safeguard was quite fitting. Luo Jun winked at Chen Fei and said, "Don't tell anyone that I told you. I'll leave now. Let's go to the Drunken Red Pavilion together next time." Chen Fei watched as Luo Jun left. He stood there, pondering for a moment, before going to receive Qi Defeng. After handing over the medicinal pills and herbs, Chen Fei inquired about the situation at the stall. Fortunately, there had been no one following Qi Defeng recently. Recently, there have been a few more stalls selling medicinal pills on that street. I went to take a look. The pills sold are quite varied, but their quality is decent, Chen Fei remarked. That works in our favor, Chen Fei couldn't help but smile. If there were too many people selling medicinal pills, it could be detrimental to their business. It might even affect the prices of medicinal pills. However, Chen Fei hoped that more stalls would appear, as it would decrease the chances of Qi Defeng being noticed. Moreover, the light spirit pills that Chen Fei refined had reached its peak in terms of appearance and medicinal effects. Once someone purchased them, they would be able to recognize the quality. As a result, the medicinal pills Chen Fei produced each day could still be sold smoothly. After seeing off Qi Defeng, Chen Fei spent 6 hours refining pills. Most of them were light spirit pills, and some were eternal floating pills, which Chen Fei mainly consumed himself. Chen Fei walked out of the house and looked at the sky. After hesitating for a moment, he headed towards Guo Linchen's residence. As a new disciple, Guo Linchen had a much better living environment than Chen Fei. Guo Linchen was a little surprised to see Chen Fei, but he warmly invited him into the house. 2 hours later, Guo Linchen saw Chen Fei off. "Little junior brother, your understanding is truly extraordinary. Those difficult points are impossible to grasp unless you have been cultivating the origin connection technique for a long time," Guo Linchen said, looking at Chen Fei with amazement. However, he also expressed some concern, saying, "But your current cultivation level is still low. You've just entered the bone tempering realm. You need to work harder to break through to the marrow tempering realm as soon as possible. Otherwise, your future cultivation will become even more challenging." "Thank you for your advice," Chen Fei replied, cupping his hands. "Senior brother, please wait. There's no need to send me off. Oh, by the way, there's a mission in the sect a few days from now, and it happens to be in our area. Although you're new, you'll have to come with us, junior brother. I'll explain the details when I have the time," Guo Linchen suddenly mentioned. "A mission?" Chen Fei was taken aback but nodded in agreement. "Take care, junior brother," Guo Linchen said with a smile. Chen Fei waved his hand and walked back to his house. He hadn't brought any gifts or made things difficult for Guo Linchen, yet he had answered all the questions he had. Chen Fei even tried to mention offering some local specialties, but Guo Linchen's expression changed instantly. This man was not someone to be trifled with. What does Luo Jun want? Does he want me to be beaten up by senior brother Guo? Chen Fei thought of Luo Jun's words in the morning and furrowed his brows. If he were to force a gift, he might genuinely be expelled by Guo Linchen. Chen Fei decided to confront Luo Jun tonight. Such behavior was unacceptable. Night fell. "Who is it?" "It's so late," came Luo Jun's impatient voice. He opened the door, and before he could see who it was, a black shadow attacked his face. Luo Jun's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively blocked the attack. However, the black shadow seemed to anticipate his move and slightly adjusted its attack, dodging his arm. Luo Jun felt a sharp pain on his cheek and involuntarily fell backward. Before he could get up, a sack fell from the sky and covered him. At the same time, Luo Jun heard the sound of his door being forcefully shut. Panic surged within Luo Jun. Was someone trying to kill him? Who is it? Who dares to harm someone in the primordial sword sect? Do you want to die? Luo Jun shouted loudly, attempting to tear the sack apart with his arms. However, in the next moment, a barrage of attacks rained down on him. Luo Jun couldn't react in time, and he was mercilessly struck repeatedly. "Don't hit me! Stop! I haven't offended anyone! Stop attacking!" Initially, Luo Jun shouted defiantly, but soon he began screaming in pain. The assailant specifically targeted his head and face, causing excruciating pain that made Luo Jun beg for mercy. Luo Jun's cries gradually subsided as he was continuously pummeled, rendering him unable to muster the strength to shout. He was beaten until he fainted multiple times, only to wake up in agony. After an unknown amount of time, Luo Jun slowly regained consciousness. He instinctively recoiled, realizing that the beating had ceased. Luo Jun's body ached all over as he removed the sack covering him, revealing a face so disfigured that only his mother could recognize him. Who did this? You're going too far." Luo Jun sat on the ground, tears streaming from his eyes. The tears flowed over his wounds, causing him unbearable pain. His facial features were distorted from the swelling. It hurt so much. Chapter 73, Chapter 73, Alchemist Alliance. Chapter 73, Alchemist Alliance. Ever since Chen Fei had a good talk with Luo Jun that night, he hadn't seen Luo Jun for a few days. Perhaps Luo Jun realized that he had done something wrong and was too embarrassed to show up. During this time, Chen Fei had been diligently practicing the first level of the origin connection technique while occasionally seeking guidance from Guo Linshan. Every time, Chen Fei would ask about the key points of the origin connection technique. These were crucial aspects that one could only grasp through deep cultivation. As a result, Guo Linshan always felt a sense of satisfaction when he provided answers. He treated it as a chance to display his knowledge and teaching abilities. If Chen Fei asked simple questions, it would be an insult to him, but when Chen Fei asked profound questions that he happened to know the answers to, it brought him a great sense of accomplishment and helped strengthen their bond. Despite frequently visiting Guo Linshan for guidance, Chen Fei remained diligent in his own practice. Guo Linshan never grew impatient with him, and in fact, he had developed a growing admiration for Chen Fei's ability to comprehend the teachings. However, Guo Linshan couldn't help but feel regretful about Chen Fei's innate talent. Just like Feng Xiaopu had sensed before, Chen Fei possessed extraordinary comprehension abilities. If only Chen Fei had Luo Jun's innate talent, he would have started his cultivation at the marrow tempering realm or even surpassed Guo Linshan. After answering today's questions, Guo Linshan looked at Chen Fei with a tinge of regret and said, "Junior brother Chen, if you had Luo Jun's innate talent, your current cultivation would have started at the marrow tempering realm, or even surpassed mine." Chen Fei smiled and replied, "Isn't the origin connection technique supposed to continuously accelerate one's cultivation speed?" Guo Linshan nodded but explained, "As you progress further in the origin connection technique, cultivation becomes increasingly challenging, especially at the 5th level. I've been stuck at this level for nearly 2 years." Guo Linshan spoke in a low voice. In order to compete for the position of a true disciple, one had to cultivate up to the 5th stage of the origin connection technique and reach the visceral tempering realm. Only then would they have a chance to access the true inheritance of the primordial sword sect. The primordial sword sect might not be as formidable as the immortal cloud sword sect in terms of top inheritance or combat strength, but it was not to say that the primordial sword sect was weak. It was just that the immortal cloud sword sect was exceptionally powerful. By the way, Senior Brother Guo, you mentioned a mission a few days ago. What is it about? Chen Fei brought up the topic. Oh, that mission. It's not a difficult task. The immortal cloud sword sect needs some medicinal herbs for pill refinement, and they have requested us to collect and deliver them, Guo Linshan explained with a smile. The immortal cloud sword sect needs medicinal herbs, and they want us to collect them. Chen Fei asked curiously. Yes, Guo Linshan confirmed. Ever since I joined the sect, the Immortal Cloud Sword sect has always assigned us tasks according to their needs. Chen Fei's eyes twitched slightly. So, this had been an ongoing arrangement. Considering the strength of the Immortal Cloud Sword sect, they could have monopolized the resources around Immortal Cloud City. Yet, they allowed the existence of the Primordial Sword sect. It seemed that they did so in order to have the sect at their disposal whenever they needed it. Fortunately, I didn't directly provide them with the pills, Chen Fei muttered quietly. The Immortal Cloud City was close to the mountain range, which was rich in medicinal herbs. Harvesting them wouldn't be a difficult task. The Immortal Cloud Sword sect doesn't trust our pill refining standards, so they only want the raw ingredients, Guo Linchen added. Chen Fei blinked his eyes in response. It seemed that the Immortal Cloud Sword sect looked down on the sect's capabilities in pill refinement. They deemed their standards to be too low and preferred to handle the refining themselves. There was nothing wrong with it at all. Senior brother Guo, I have a concern and wanted to find a solution, Chen Fei said, changing the topic to the sale of medicinal pills. After spending the past few days with Guo Linchen, Chen Fei had developed a good understanding of his character. Guo Linchen raised an eyebrow and asked, "What is it?" "I have the ability to refine pills and usually sell them in Immortal Cloud City. But in the long run, I'm worried that others might become jealous and cause trouble," Chen Fei whispered. "Junior brother can refine pills." Guo Linchen was slightly surprised. Considering Chen Fei's comprehension and the alchemical atmosphere around him, it wasn't something unbelievable. However, professional pill refiners were not uncommon in the Primordial Sword sect. There were many inner sect disciples who specialized in pill refinement. It was just that most cultivators focused on martial arts, and their talents lay there rather than in alchemy. "I can refine light spirit pills," Chen Fei confirmed. "Junior brother Chen can already refine light spirit pills." "That's quite impressive," Guo Linchen remarked with surprise. This level of skill was considered remarkable among secondary cultivators. Guo Linchen pondered for a moment and said, "Selling pills in Immortal Cloud City isn't dangerous. After all, it falls under the jurisdiction of the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. However, if you have concerns, there is a safe option." "What is it?" Chen Fei asked, sitting up straight. "Joining the Alchemist Alliance. It's a gathering place for alchemists," Guo Linchen explained, taking a sip of tea. The Alchemist Alliance was originally established by a rogue cultivator who felt that alchemists were often oppressed. It started as a support association, but after more than 100 years, it has developed into the current Alchemist Alliance. Chen Fei's eyes lit up. During his previous research, he had focused on information about sex and completely overlooked this aspect. The influence of a mindset had escaped his attention. But it was not too late to know about it now. "After joining, I'll be protected by the Alliance?" Chen Fei asked. "Of course. What would be the point of the Alliance if it didn't provide protection? Not only does it offer protection, but it's also a place for alchemists to exchange knowledge and improve their skills. The current Alliance Master of the Alchemist Alliance is Wei Xingshan, who is also the Peak Master of the Immortal Cloud Sword Sect's Pill Peak," Guo Linchen explained, recollecting the information. Chen Fei's expression changed slightly. The Alliance Master had a powerful background. It was almost inevitable for the leader of a rogue cultivator Alchemist Alliance to eventually join a section. But don't get too excited. There are certain requirements to join the Alchemist Alliance, Guo Linchen chuckled upon seeing Chen Fei's eager expression. "Is it the age requirement? What's the age limit for alchemists?" Chen Fei asked. "It's not the age. I heard that you have to refine pills of a certain standard before you can join," Guo Linchen laughed involuntarily. "Many people in our sect can't meet the criteria." Chen Fei nodded in understanding. After chatting with Guo Linchen for a while longer, Chen Fei bid farewell and left. He quickly packed his belongings and left the sect to return to Celestial Cloud City to find Qi Defeng. Together, they inquired about the location of the Alchemist Alliance. If we can join the Alchemist Alliance, we won't have to worry about selling pills in the future, Chi Defeng whispered as they observed the people entering and exiting the Alliance's headquarters. Chi Defeng knew that Chen Fei could refine the eternal floating pills. Compared to the light spirit pills, the eternal floating pills commanded a much higher price. With the size of Immortal Cloud City, Chen Fei would easily be able to sell all the eternal floating pills he produced. It would be a substantial amount of money. While he had refrained from profiting before, now he finally had the opportunity. Stop! Non-alchemists are not allowed to enter. Just as they reached the entrance, a guard abruptly halted Chen Fei and Chi Defeng. I'm an alchemist and wish to join the Alchemist Alliance, Chen Fei announced, cupping his hands. The guard glanced at Chen Fei and replied, to enter the Alchemist Alliance, you must pass a test. Are both of you alchemists? I'm not. I'm his friend, Chi Defeng quickly clarified. In that case, you can't enter. Please wait outside for now. If this young master passes the test, then you can accompany him inside later, the guard instructed in a firm tone. Chi Defeng nodded and headed to a nearby tea house to wait. Chen Fei followed the guard into the building. Inside the Alliance residence, many people were engaged in lively conversations, discussing various aspects of pill refinement. The air was filled with a subtle medicinal fragrance, as if Chen Fei had stepped into a vast pill refining chamber. Chapter 74, Chapter 74, Grade 9 Pill Refiner. Chapter 74, Grade 9 Pill Refiner. Are you here for the Alliance entry test? The guard led Chen Fei to a location where a female deacon awaited him. Yes. I was wondering if there are any requirements for the test, Chen Fei inquired. Of course, Qin Jinglan replied, nodding slightly with a warm smile. Recently, many people have expressed interest in joining the Alchemist Alliance. The requirements have become more stringent. Candidates must successfully refine the light spirit pill, and the quality of the pill must be excellent. In that case, can I take the test today? Chen Fei asked eagerly. You need to submit an application and pay a test fee of 1,000 taels. If you pass the test, the fee will be refunded. Otherwise, it will be used for the Alliance's development, Qin Jinglan explained. Chen Fei's expression shifted slightly, realizing that this measure was in place to prevent those who were not strong enough from wasting the Alliance's resources. All right, Chen Fei agreed without objection. Qin Jinglan led Chen Fei to the counter, where he paid the registration fee. After a while, she guided him to a row of closed pill rooms, presumably where alchemists were refining medicinal pills. Please note that if you fail the first test, the next opportunity will be available only after 6 months, and the test fee will be doubled, Qin Jinglan reminded him. Thank you for the reminder, Chen Fei responded with a smile. Qin Jinglan nodded and took Chen Fei to one of the pill rooms. She instructed, please refine the light spirit pill within an hour. Exceeding the time limit will result in failure. Looking around, Chen Fei noticed various medicinal herbs scattered about the room, requiring him to sort them out himself. He glanced at Qin Jinglan, who held a photo stone in her hand, signaling that he could begin. The photo stone would remain in the pill room to prevent favoritism and allow verification at any time. Chen Fei confidently found the necessary medicinal ingredients for the light spirit pill among the assortment. After briefly cleaning the pill furnace on the ground, he started a fire and waited for the furnace to heat up. He then added all the herbs for the light spirit pill into the furnace. Observing from the side, Qin Jinglan frowned slightly. Chen Fei's actions seemed to be correct, but his movements appeared somewhat rough, lacking finesse. Additionally, the order in which he placed the herbs was incorrect. Pouring them all in at once resembled the work of a novice. Another crucial issue was that the fire beneath the furnace was too intense. Refining pills required precise control of the fire. While a larger flame accelerated the pill formation, it exponentially increased the difficulty of control. Hence, the alliance provided an hour for the test, allowing alchemists to work without haste. Indeed, when it came to alchemy, meticulous work produced superior results. Qin Jinglan anticipated that Chen Fei's pill furnace was likely to explode. Unaware of Qin Jinglan's thoughts, Chen Fei followed his usual rhythm, adjusting the changes in medicinal properties within the pill furnace with his inner strength. This was the most effective method Chen Fei had devised for himself. It allowed for the fastest pill production without compromising quality. He couldn't be sure if it was suitable for others, but it worked for him. After all, he wouldn't have been able to produce nearly 100 light spirit pills in a few hours if the process hadn't been efficient, even with a high pill production rate. Efficiency was their goal. Under Qin Jinglan's gaze, awaiting the impending explosion, a faint medicinal fragrance began to permeate the pill room. Qin Jinglan sniffed the air, her expression registering surprise. The scent indicated that the furnace was not about to explode. Even after years of exposure to medicinal aromas, she sensed that the quality of this batch of pills was likely exceptional. Qin Jinglan looked at Chen Fei in astonishment, her expression slightly changing. Alchemy couldn't be faked. Discarding her initial bias, Qin Jinglan re-evaluated Chen Fei's alchemical movements. Surprisingly, he appeared agile and composed. Just 15 minutes later, Chen Fei slammed his palm on the furnace lid, emitting a muffled sound that snapped Qin Jinglan out of her thoughts. "Is this acceptable?" Chen Fei asked, placing the finished medicinal pill on a nearby plate and handing it to Qin Jinglan. Examining the light spirit pill on the porcelain plate, Qin Jinglan couldn't conceal her admiration. Without a complete understanding of the pill formula, refining a pill of this caliber would be impossible. Qin Jinglan had witnessed numerous trials, but she could count the instances of encountering such a high-quality light spirit pill on one hand. Moreover, Chen Fei's speed of production was remarkable. "I still need to verify it," Qin Jinglan said, bowing slightly as she stored the photo stone. Her attitude had shifted considerably as she continued, "Please follow me." Chen Fei smiled and followed Qin Jinglan to a counter. She handed over the porcelain plate and the photo stone. After some time, the medicinal pill and the photo stone were swiftly verified. The alliance's representatives confirmed the information with Chen Fei and placed a jade card in front of him. "This is your proof of identity in the Alchemist Alliance," Qin Jinglan respectfully presented the jade token to him. Chen Fei accepted it, observing the pill furnace carved on the jade pendant with a smile. Finally, he had a backing. He could now sell the eternal floating pill without worrying about unwelcome visitors. "By the way, does the Alliance sell pill formulas?" Chen Fei turned around and inquired. "They are not available for sale," Qin Jinglan shook her head. "However, you can use your contribution points to obtain them." Contribution points. Chen Fei furrowed his brow. By completing missions assigned by the Alliance, you can earn contribution points. You can also contribute your own pill formulas to the Alliance, which, upon evaluation, will reward you with contribution points. Contribution points can be used to exchange for pill formulas, and with enough points, you can even issue missions. As long as the mission does not harm others, it can be released, Qin Jinglan explained. Chen Fei suddenly understood. This system was similar to a sex approach, aiming to foster loyalty among its members. Otherwise, obtaining gratitude for various free offerings would prove challenging. "Is there a difference in status between being able to refine the light spirit pill and the eternal floating pill?" Chen Fei inquired. "Of course, there is a difference. If you can refine the eternal floating pill and its quality and efficacy meet the requirements, you can advance from a level 9 alchemist to a level 8 alchemist. Some Alliance missions have restrictions that only high-grade alchemists can accept," Qin Jinglan responded, her eyes sparkling with a trace of unfamiliarity. "Such a young level 8 alchemist?" Chen Fei was a little taken aback, but he had a tall and well-proportioned figure. Upon closer inspection, he appeared quite handsome. Chen Fei suddenly realized that there was indeed a ranking system for pill refiners. Considering the significant disparity in the number of medicinal ingredients used in the eternal floating pill compared to the light spirit pill, as well as the greater difficulty of refining it, such a system made sense. It allowed for clear differentiation between the pill refining skills required for the two types. This system facilitated the management of the alliance as well. I would like to apply for the level 8 alchemist examination, Chen Fei announced, looking at Qin Jinglan. After consistently refining light spirit pills during this period, Chen Fei had attained a level of proficiency with the eternal floating pill that bordered on perfection. It was time to showcase his skills. Please wait a moment, young master, Qin Jinglan said, walking away and returning after a considerable time. Young master, please follow me. Qin Jinglan bowed slightly and led Chen Fei to the pill room. They arrived, finding an elderly pill refiner already present. The assessment for a level 8 alchemist has become even more stringent, Qin Jinglan stated softly in the pill room. Whether it was an illusion or not, Chen Fei felt that Qin Jinglan's voice had become significantly softer. It was pleasant to the ear. Sounded good. Chapter 75, Roping Him In. Chapter 75, Roping Him In. In contrast to Qin Jinglan's amiable expression, the old alchemist Duan's Hilly remained completely impassive. The reason for having an additional person in the level 8 alchemist examination was to make the process more rigorous and cautious. Duan's Hilly, being a level 8 alchemist himself, was more than qualified to serve as an examiner. However, when Duan's Hilly saw Chen Fei's youthful face, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Indeed, among martial artists, Chen Fei was considered a mature youth. Having just entered the bone-tempering realm, the major sects in Immortal Cloud City didn't pay much attention to him, considering him a disciple with little potential. But among alchemists, Chen Fei was still young. Alchemists valued comprehension and experience, and as one grew older, even with mediocre comprehension, they could accumulate experience and achieve perfection through practice. Duan's Hilly himself had average talent in alchemy, but after so many years, he had become quite adept at refining the eternal floating pill and other pills of the same grade. On the other hand, his success rate with the flying ascent pill was low, and the quality of the pill was not particularly good. Therefore, Duan's Hilly felt a twinge of discomfort seeing someone as young as Chen Fei taking the level 8 alchemist examination. Lately, there had been an influx of young individuals attempting the pill refining mastery examination. Chen Fei began by selecting the medicinal herbs, then proceeded to light a fire and prepare the furnace. He poured all the medicinal herbs into the pill furnace, and the scorching flames licked its base. Chen Fei used his inner strength to control the medicinal properties, and soon the pill furnace emitted a faint medicinal fragrance. Qin Jinglan's beautiful eyes shimmered as she observed Chen Fei. Initially, she thought his pill refining movements were rough and unrefined. But now, upon closer inspection, it became evident that he didn't fuss over trivial matters and exuded confidence. Compared to those who were overly cautious in their pill refining, this seemed to be the true essence of pill refinement. Duan's Hilly caught a whiff of the medicinal fragrance, and his expression changed slightly. This batch of eternal floating pills would be of exceptional quality, surpassing the level of pills he had refined over the past few decades. In fact, in certain aspects, they might even be superior. After just 15 minutes, Chen Fei slapped the furnace lid, causing the pill fragrance to intensify. Unable to resist, Duan's Hilly stepped forward to examine the few eternal floating pills resting quietly inside the pill furnace, a hint of surprise appearing in his eyes. Have you succeeded? Qin Jinglan couldn't help but ask softly. It awaits confirmation, but I believe there shouldn't be any problems, Chen Fei replied. Duan's Hilly took the porcelain plate and closely inspected the quality of the eternal floating pill. Indeed, it was refined better than his own. This kind of medicinal pill had tapped into the full potential of the eternal floating pill in terms of medicinal efficacy. Junior, would you like to take the test? Duans Hilly raised his head to look at Chen Fei. Given that the eternal floating pill had been refined to such a level, the quality of the flying ascent pill was likely to be commendable as well. This was because the foundation was incredibly solid. Qin Jinglan widened her eyes as she gazed at Chen Fei. Could it be that he could take the Level 7 Alchemist examination? A Level 7 Alchemist held considerable status even in the vast immortal Cloud City. Their standing was much higher than that of an ordinary visceral tempering realm martial artist. I don't possess the recipe for the flying ascent pill, Chen Fei replied, shaking his head. Although he had read numerous medical books and purchased the flying ascent pill for study, deducing the pill formula had proven to be a challenging task. Based on his current progress, if Chen Fei wanted to derive the flying ascent pill successfully, it would take at least 6 more months, which was considered relatively smooth progress. Duans Hilly nodded in understanding. It was true that itinerant pill refiners from other regions rarely possessed the recipe for the flying ascent pill. With this level of alchemy, it was unlikely that they would be able to reach Immortal Cloud City. They would be besieged by aristocratic families in various regions. There was no way they would let him go so easily. Senior, would you be willing to sell the recipe for the flying ascent pill? Chen Fei asked hopefully. As long as the price wasn't too exorbitant, it would be best to obtain it directly. After all, Chen Fei would be able to earn back the money quickly once he refined it himself. My pill formula was obtained through exchange within the alliance. Private transactions are not allowed, Duans Hilly shook his head. Using contribution points to exchange for pill formulas within the alliance is strictly regulated. If anyone is caught engaging in private transactions, both parties will face severe punishment, Qin Jinglan quickly explained. Chen Fei nodded, understanding the situation. After all, if private transactions were allowed, the contribution points within the alliance would lose their value. Pill refiners wouldn't be motivated to complete the alliance's missions. If such a scenario were allowed, the Alchemist Alliance would become a laughingstock. If you change your mind one day, feel free to come and find me, young friend, Duans Hilly nodded before walking away. Qin Jinglan bowed slightly to Chen Fei and led him to the counter, where she handed over the porcelain plate and the photo stone. The verification process took some time. At the same time, she sought Duans Hilly's opinion. As Duans Hilly didn't voice any objections, Chen Fei smoothly passed the level 8 alchemist examination. He received a new jade token, which had been warmed up for a while and had a different design from Qin Jinglan. Examining the patterns on the jade token, Chen Fei noted that they were more exquisite compared to the previous ones. The surrounding cloud patterns were denser as well. I usually sell medicinal pills on North Street. Can I display the logo of the Alchemist Guild? Chen Fei asked after receiving the jade token. After stowing away the jade token, he turned to Qin Jinglan. She stared back at him, and when Chen Fei suddenly met her gaze, her face involuntarily reddened. Yes, the Alliance has a special medicine bottle that only authorized pill refiners can use. This way, others will know that you're from the Alliance, Qin Jinglan replied, her voice soft. Chen Fei looked at Qin Jinglan, slightly puzzled. Could it be that this woman was harboring ulterior motives? Why was she blushing? 15 minutes later, Chen Fei left the Alliance and found Qi Defeng. How did it go? Qi Defeng asked eagerly upon seeing Chen Fei. While Chen Fei was in the Alliance, Qi Defeng had taken the opportunity to gather information about the Alchemist Alliance and had gained a rough understanding of their strength. Essentially, once someone became a pill refiner recognized by the Alliance, ordinary forces wouldn't deliberately cause them trouble. There would be no need for Chen Fei to worry about selling pills on North Street. The Alchemist Alliance was quite well known in the vicinity of Immortal Cloud City. From now on, you can use my jade token to buy medicine bottles from the Alliance. A smile appeared on Chen Fei's face. Chapter 76, Chapter 76, Initial Appearance of Comprehension. Chapter 76, Initial Appearance of Comprehension. Switching from the light spirit pill to the eternal floating pill, although the refining time was slightly longer and the yield per furnace was slightly reduced, Chen Fei could earn over 1,000 taels of silver a day after deducting the cost of the medicinal ingredients. The best part was that he didn't have to worry about any trouble with this income. Chen Fei felt that he was on the verge of becoming very wealthy. He finally had hope of cultivating the suppressing dragon elephant, which had always been his trump card. Chen Fei only needed to save money for about a month to unveil the true potential of this cultivation technique. Great! Qi Defeng's face lit up with a smile as he looked at the jade token in his hand. Now, he and Chen Fei were in the same boat. If Chen Fei succeeded, he would succeed too. Several days flew by in the blink of an eye. In addition to his daily alchemy practice, Chen Fei dedicated most of his time to grinding the proficiency of the origin connection technique. After many days of hard work, Chen Fei had finally reached the peak of the first level. Cultivation Method, Origin Connection Technique Stage 1, 1000/1000. Curious about the effects of perfecting the first level of the origin connection technique, Chen Fei conducted tests. While the effect of swallowing the medicinal pill remained unchanged, the cultivation effects provided by the technique itself increased by approximately 10%. The increase wasn't very noticeable since Chen Fei primarily relied on consuming medicinal pills for rapid cultivation. However, considering this was only the first level, weaker effects were expected. Carrying a pot of wine, Chen Fei knocked on Guo Linchen's door. This wine was from an ordinary inn in Immortal Cloud City, but Guo Linchen particularly enjoyed it. He wasn't fond of more expensive wines. Junior brother. Guo Linchen opened the door and saw Chen Fei with a pot of wine, his face breaking into a smile. After a few interactions, Guo Linchen had developed a good impression of Chen Fei. You didn't have to bring anything, Guo Linchen welcomed Chen Fei inside. I had to bring some wine to moisten my throat after bombarding senior brother with so many questions, Chen Fei said with a smile, placing the wine pot on the table. Guo Linchen found 2 bowls and poured wine into each. The fragrance of the wine made his smile even wider. He truly enjoyed this wine. Senior brother Guo, master only taught me the origin connection technique. When will he teach me the other sword techniques and movement techniques? Chen Fei seized the opportunity to ask the question that had been on his mind. There's no need to rush. Master treats everyone the same, Guo Linchen replied, thinking that Chen Fei was concerned about potential bias from Feng Xiaopu. Every month, Master tests our martial arts progress. If you perform well, he will consider teaching you other techniques based on your abilities. What is considered outstanding performance? It's hard to say for others, but for someone like you who has just entered the sect, as long as you cultivate the origin connection technique well, your performance will naturally be considered outstanding, Guo Linchen replied, finishing the wine in his bowl. You've perfected the first level of the origin connection technique. Chen Fei looked at Guo Linchen and asked. Yes, if you can cultivate it to perfection, it will indeed be considered outstanding. Guo Linchen nodded. I see. Chen Fei extended his hand, and his right index finger became slightly transparent as if a layer of light was about to burst out from it. Guo Linchen, still with wine in his mouth, was taken aback when he saw the phenomenon with Chen Fei's finger. He nearly spat out the wine. The origin connection technique allowed the internal force to travel from top to bottom. After reaching the peak of the first level of the origin connection technique, the force could be transmitted to the fingertips, as Chen Fei had just demonstrated. Have you cultivated the origin connection technique before? Guo Linchen's initial reaction was that Chen Fei had learned it before. Otherwise, how could he progress so quickly? Guo Linchen himself had spent more than a month to reach the same level of cultivation. However, he quickly dismissed the thought. Chen Fei's comprehension of the primordial sword suggested that mastering the first level of the origin connection technique in a few days was not impossible. Of course, It could also be attributed to natural compatibility. After all, there had been many such examples in the sect over the years. Chen Fei smiled and shook his head. Senior brother, you must be joking. The origin connection technique is an inner sect cultivation technique. How could it be circulated outside? Moreover, Master has already tested my aptitude. If I had learned it before, he would have detected it. That's true, Guo Linchen agreed. It was unlikely for the origin connection technique to be leaked to outsiders, although it wasn't impossible. Furthermore, if Chen Fei had truly learned it secretly, he would have kept it hidden. There was no reason for him to reveal it like this. If Guo Linchen reported this to Feng Xiaopu, the master would likely test Chen Fei's internal strength again. After all, there were still differences in internal strength cultivated through the origin connection technique, especially in the presence of someone like Feng Xiaopu, who had reached the peak of the 5th tier. So, did Chen Fei genuinely master the first level of the origin connection technique in just a few days? If that were the case, even if his innate ability was slightly weaker, he might still have a bright future. Let's go find Master, Guo Linchen said eagerly, standing up and leading the way. Chen Fei followed closely behind. In no time, they arrived outside Feng Xiaopu's courtyard. Master, disciple Guo Linchen requests an audience. Guo Linchen announced loudly. What is it? Feng Xiaopu, who hadn't left his courtyard that day, happened to be there and was puzzled when he saw Guo Linchen and Chen Fei approaching. Master, junior brother has perfected the first level of the origin connection technique, Guo Linchen whispered to Feng Xiaopu. Feng Xiaopu was taken aback, looking at Chen Fei. Chen Fei extended his palm, and his 5 fingers emitted a faint glow. Surprise flickered in Feng Xiaopu's eyes. His initial reaction was that Chen Fei had learned it before, but he quickly dismissed the idea. Considering Chen Fei's comprehension of the primordial sword, it seemed plausible that he had mastered the first level of the origin connection technique in a few days. Naturally, this could also be attributed to his compatibility with the technique. After all, there had been similar cases in the sect before. Come in, Feng Xiaopu invited them into his study. He took out the secret manual for the second stage of the origin connection technique and began explaining the cultivation steps and key points. 2 hours passed, and Feng Xiaopu concluded his explanations. Chen Fei checked the interface. Cultivation method, origin connection stage 2, January 2000. Feng Xiaopu asked in a low voice, how many days do you think it will take for you to perfect the second level of the origin connection art? Chen Fei estimated the speed at which he was gaining proficiency points and looked up at Feng Xiaopu. Within 10 days, I believe it should be possible. Guo Linchen, who had been listening for 2 hours, was no longer feeling drowsy after hearing Chen Fei's words. Feng Xiaopu, too, looked at Chen Fei in shock. He had estimated it would take at least a month. Chen Fei had shattered that expectation by more than half. Chapter 77, Chapter 77, The Starry Night. Chapter 77, The Starry Night. Junior brother, are you serious? Guo Linchen couldn't help but ask, aware of the records left by the sect's previous disciples. Is it too fast? Chen Fei asked tentatively. In truth, given a choice, Chen Fei would still prefer to quietly cultivate the origin connection technique until reaching the 5th realm. However, the way the primordial sword sect imparted their cultivation method left him with no other option. Actually, most sects taught cultivation techniques in a similar manner. Only rogue cultivators would casually hand you a secret manual and let you cultivate on your own. Firstly, the sect had to take responsibility for you. Secondly, they needed to assess your character and loyalty before deciding whether to teach you the cultivation technique. Unless Chen Fei was willing to delay his cultivation progress, there was no way for him to hide it. After observing for the past few days, Chen Fei realized that he didn't need to hide anything. Feng Xiaopu was strict, but he wasn't a bad person. Moreover, after becoming his disciple, Chen Fei had actually become bound to Feng Xiaopu's branch. Even the fastest disciple took more than a month. Guo Linchen grinned, sensing that his junior brother was showing off. In the end, whether it takes 10 days or a month, it will depend on the results. Feng Xiaopu waved his hand, providing a rough estimate. Master, can I learn other cultivation techniques? Chen Fei suddenly asked. What cultivation technique do you want to learn? Feng Xiaopu didn't immediately refuse, curious about Chen Fei's request. Sword techniques, movement techniques, archery techniques, I have dabbled in all of them. Junior brother, you've learned a lot before. Guo Linchen couldn't help but laugh. Rogue cultivators always pursue a variety of methods, Chen Fei chuckled. I haven't touched archery. If there's an opportunity in the future, you can explore the sutra library. Now that you have cultivated the origin connection technique quite well, I can teach you a sword technique and a movement technique. Feng Xiaopu pondered for a moment before retrieving 2 secret manuals from the bookshelf and placing them on the table. The Starry Night Sword? Master, isn't this sword technique a little weak? I haven't seen any other disciples practice it for a long time. Guo Linchen glanced at the secret manual, puzzled. The Starry Night Sword is not focused on offense but rather on defense. Chen Fei's current cultivation realm is still insufficient. No matter how strong his sword technique is, if his cultivation cannot keep up, it will be useless. It's better for him to prioritize self-defense when facing danger. That's the best choice, Feng Xiaopu explained. Guo Linchen considered Chen Fei's cultivation base, which had just entered the bone-tempering realm, and found the explanation reasonable. Although the Starry Night Sword was not particularly adept at attacking, its defense was remarkably strong. It was indeed more suitable for Chen Fei. The soul-chasing step is similar. It's not particularly versatile for swift movements or climbing, but it excels in long-distance attacks. If you encounter danger, don't always think about resisting. If you can run, just run. There's nothing to be embarrassed about, Feng Xiaopu smiled. Chen Fei's eyes lit up. Feng Xiaopu's words resonated with him. If they encountered someone they couldn't defeat, running away was the natural course of action. Chen Fei had been thinking that it would be best if he could acquire a technique that excelled at long-range attacks. The martial artists he encountered were either at the marrow-tempering or visceral-tempering realms, all of them from sections. Compared to wandering cultivators, these sect martial artists were undoubtedly much stronger. If Chen Fei still wanted to jump realms to fight, the chances of success were extremely low. Therefore, it was crucial for him to be able to escape swiftly when unable to win. Thank you, Master, Chen Fei expressed his gratitude. Feng Xiaopu waved his hand and opened the Starry Night Sword manual. Currently, very few disciples are cultivating the Starry Night Sword. Besides its lack of offensive power, the difficulty of cultivating it is also extremely high. You need to listen attentively to my explanations. If you come across anything you don't understand, you can ask me at any time. Chen Fei nodded, and Feng Xiaopu began explaining the steps for cultivating the Starry Night Sword. Compared to the sword techniques Chen Fei had cultivated in the past, the difficulty of the Starry Night Sword was much higher. Additionally, most of the sword techniques were primarily defensive, with only 1 or 2 active moves. As the explanation went deeper, Chen Fei gradually let go of other distractions and devoted himself to learning. Whenever he encountered something he didn't understand, he would immediately ask questions. In the blink of an eye, 2 more hours passed before Feng Xiaopu finished explaining the Starry Night Sword. Have you learned it? Feng Xiaopu looked at Chen Fei and inquired. Chen Fei glanced at the interface. The Starry Night Sword was already at the beginner level. However, the progress bar was a bit different from previous cultivation techniques, requiring more proficiency. Cultivation technique, Starry Night Sword, beginner 1/300. Yes, I have learned it, Chen Fei replied, raising his head to look at Feng Xiaopu. Feng Xiaopu nodded slightly. He glanced at Guo Linchen and saw his interest. Rather than sending him away, he picked up another secret manual, The Soul-Chasing Step. Another 2 hours of explanation passed, with Feng Xiaopu occasionally pausing to perform a few steps. Compared to the difficulty of cultivating the Starry Night Sword, the soul-chasing step was just as challenging, if not more. Chen Fei looked at the interface. He had also grasped the basics of the soul-chasing step and noticed that the required proficiency was the same as for the Starry Night Sword. Deep in thought, Chen Fei realized that the interface's assessment criterion seemed to assign the same proficiency requirement to cultivation techniques of the same level. It didn't appear to consider the subjective difficulty of cultivation. Today, I have gained valuable insights into the Starry Night Sword and the soul-chasing step. I still have much to learn. If you have any questions, feel free to find me anytime, Feng Xiaopu said, handing the 3 secret manuals to Chen Fei, who accepted them eagerly. Thank you, Master. Feng Xiaopu nodded slightly and engaged in further conversation before Chen Fei and the others bid a hasty farewell and left. Feng Xiaopu watched Chen Fei's departing figure and smiled. Previously, he thought that Chen Fei's martial arts accomplishments in this lifetime would likely be mediocre at best. However, he was pleasantly surprised. By specially teaching Chen Fei the Starry Night Sword and the soul-chasing step, Feng Xiaopu wanted to test his comprehension abilities, apart from the reasons he had mentioned earlier. If Chen Fei's aptitude was merely highly compatible with the origin connection technique, then although his achievements wouldn't be bad, there would still be a limit, such as reaching the visceral tempering realm. However, if Chen Fei's comprehension abilities were truly outstanding and not solely reliant on the compatibility of the cultivation technique, then his potential limit would undoubtedly be much higher. The visceral tempering realm was the final stage of the 5 realms of body tempering, but the path of martial arts was not limited to the body tempering realm. I feel rather guilty for keeping senior brother for so long today, Chen Fei said, looking at Guo Linchen. Junior brother, you don't have to be so polite. Besides, I had the opportunity to listen to our master explain the intricacies of the cultivation techniques. How could I consider waiting a little longer a waste of time? Guo Linchen laughed and patted Chen Fei's shoulder. His words were sincere. Although the Starry Night Sword was not his main cultivation technique, the principles of the techniques were sometimes interconnected, and there was no harm in listening and learning more. By the way, the mission's timing has been set. It will commence in 5 days. Junior brother, be prepared, Guo Linchen suddenly mentioned. Understood. I hope senior brother will guide me when the time comes, Chen Fei nodded. The two chatted for a while before parting ways. Chen Fei returned to his room, closed the door, and focused his attention on the panel. Chapter 78, Chapter 78, Bully. Chapter 78, Bully. Editor, Dragon Boat Translation. In a single day, Chen Fei had acquired 3 top-notch cultivation techniques, which was a significant harvest. Cultivating these 3 techniques to perfection would elevate his strength to a new level. Chen Fei's first step was to integrate the 3 cultivation techniques with his original ones. Discovered a cultivation technique. Do you want to spend 1,500 taels of silver to simplify the second stage of the origin connection technique? Discovered a cultivation technique. Do you want to spend 1,000 taels of silver to simplify the Starry Night Sword? Discovered a cultivation technique. Do you want to spend 1,000 taels of silver to simplify the soul-chasing step? The price for simplifying the second stage of the origin connection technique had increased. The Starry Night Sword and the simplified version of the soul-chasing step were also expensive but within Chen Fei's acceptable range. The second stage of the origin connection technique is being simplified. Simplification was successful. Second level of the origin connection technique - first level of the origin connection technique. The Starry Night Sword is being simplified. Simplification was successful. Starry Night Sword Primordial Sword. The soul-chasing step is being simplified. Simplification was successful. Soul-chasing step - cloud ascending step. Taking a deep breath, Chen Fei knew it was time to gain experience once again. He set a small goal for himself to achieve great completion on the soul-chasing step within 5 days. Days passed, and Chen Fei spent his mornings refining pills and his afternoons grinding the proficiency of the origin connection technique and the soul-chasing step. He didn't step foot outside the main gate, completely engrossed in his cultivation like an ascetic monk. Even as night fell, Chen Fei continued his cultivation without a pause. At a certain level, martial artists could replace sleep to some extent with cultivation. Of course, it wasn't as comfortable as sleeping, but Chen Fei couldn't miss the opportunity to stay up late, especially when it served such a meaningful purpose. In the blink of an eye, the 5th day arrived. Chen Fei joined Guo Linchen and others as they ventured into the mountains. The team was large, with most members being hired herb gatherers. Their main task would be to supervise and transport the medicinal herbs once they were collected by the herb gatherers. Under normal circumstances, there shouldn't be any danger in the mountains. However, one must always be alert to unexpected situations. If we're fast, we can return in no more than half a month, Guo Linchen addressed the disciples loudly upon reaching the mountain encampment. This mission was compulsory for all inner sect disciples of the primordial sword sect. Failure to complete it would result in severe punishment. Yes, Senior Brother Guo. Everyone shouted in response before spreading out to their assigned positions, overseeing the herb gatherers' progress. Junior Brother, it's been a while. Luo Jun suddenly walked up to Chen Fei with a smile. Chen Fei turned to look at him. Although he had already seen Luo Jun earlier, he hadn't considered whether he should greet him. After all, he had just beaten him up. While his primary goal was to prevent Luo Jun from making such jokes in the future, Chen Fei still harbored some personal grudges. I've been busy with cultivation recently and haven't gone out much, Chen Fei replied, examining Luo Jun's face. There were no scars, and he seemed to have recovered quite well. Luo Jun thought that Chen Fei had heard about his sneak attack as he observed his face. It seems that Junior Brother also knows about the incident. If I find out who that person is, I won't let them off the hook. This matter is not over, Luo Jun said angrily. In truth, Luo Jun had suspected Chen Fei before. After all, he had teased him during the day and ended up getting beaten up at night. Chen Fei was highly suspicious. However, the strength displayed by the assailant made Luo Jun realize that Chen Fei was unlikely to be the culprit. Chen Fei had only just entered the bone-tempering realm, and it was impossible for someone with such limited strength to beat Luo Jun so easily. Since Luo Jun had offended many people with his sharp tongue, he quickly shifted his suspicion to others. Senior Brother is right, Chen Fei nodded in agreement. Luo Jun and Chen Fei chatted for a while before returning to their respective positions to oversee the herb gatherers. As the day drew to a close, the herb gatherers had collected a substantial amount of medicinal herbs thanks to the presence of supervisors and the generous payment they received. Whether due to the fertile soil or other factors, the medicinal herbs grew remarkably fast in these mountains. Despite the increasing population around Immortal Cloud City, the production of medicinal pills remained unaffected. In the evening, the medicinal herbs were secured onto carriages and transported down the mountain. Everyone appeared relatively relaxed. At this rate, they would likely complete the mission in around 10 days, sparing them from enduring the harsh outdoor conditions. Chen Fei paced around his designated area, not just to oversee the herb gatherers but also to cultivate the soul-chasing step. Despite staying up all night and practicing day and night, he still needed a little more time. He required a few hundred more proficiency points to achieve perfection in the soul-chasing step. Nevertheless, even though he hadn't reached perfection yet, Chen Fei's speed had significantly increased compared to before. If he managed to reach perfection, there would likely be further room for improvement. With a few hundred more proficiency points, Chen Fei could probably achieve his goal today if he worked diligently. As for the second level of the origin connection technique, he was more than halfway proficient, which was on par with Chen Fei's initial estimation of 10 days. Progress with the Starry Night Sword, often practiced alongside the soul-chasing step, was also impressive, nearing great completion. Chen Fei continued to walk around the mission area, his figure occasionally flickering. Suddenly, a loud noise erupted in the distance. Chen Fei turned around to see the source, discovering it was the sect's encampment on the mountain. Without hesitation, Chen Fei swiftly returned to the encampment. There, he found Shidehi lying on the ground, covered in blood. Chen Fei focused his gaze and recognized him as one of the herb transporters from earlier. What happened? Chen Fei turned to Luo Jun, who was already present. Somebody ambushed our herb transport convoy. Brother Shi risked his life to break free and inform us. Senior brother Guo and a group of disciples have already gone to rescue them, Luo Jun replied in a hushed tone. Chen Fei looked up and saw that the senior brothers in the marrow tempering realm were absent. Those present were all bone tempering realm disciples, including Chen Fei. Shi Dehi, lying on the ground, had consumed some pills to stabilize his injuries, allowing him to fall into a deep sleep. An hour passed, and everyone anxiously awaited Guo Linchen's return. The news had been sent back to the sect using carrier pigeons, and the sect would likely dispatch experts to assist. Although the carriages bore the primordial sword sect's markings, someone dared to attack them, indicating a lack of respect for both the sect and its disciples. Have mercy. Spare me. A voice pleading for mercy suddenly rang out. All heads turned to witness a herb gatherer being held by the neck, dragged towards them. Within moments, they reached the encampment, and the assailant threw the herb gatherer to the ground. Long Rainbow Sect. Everyone immediately recognized the tattoos and the distinctive spear, identifying the intruder. Why did you harm my herb gatherer? Luo Jun looked at the fallen herb gatherer, realizing they were from his area. He intruded into my sect's mission area. I could have even killed him. Yet, I must ask you, are you bullying my Long Rainbow sect simply because there's no one else around? Kuang Dingbo shouted angrily. His spear rested firmly in his hand, his aura exerting dominance over the surroundings. Chapter 79, Chapter 79, Divine Flame Sect. Chapter 79, Divine Flame Sect. The disciples of the primordial sword sect exchanged dismayed glances. Among the sects assigned missions by the immortal Cloud Sword sect, Long Rainbow sect was one of them. While the herb-picking areas were predetermined, the divisions were only rough estimates. It made sense in theory that herb gatherers might accidentally cross into other sects' areas. However, in reality, the division was vague, and the herb gatherers were not foolish enough to intentionally venture into other sects' territories for herbs. The risk outweighed the potential reward, making it highly unlikely. Senior brother, I believe there might be a misunderstanding, someone spoke up, wearing a pleasant expression. Just because you say it's a misunderstanding, docs that mean it's a misunderstanding? I personally witnessed him crossing the border to steal medicinal herbs. That's what I saw. And there might be many more instances I didn't witness, Kuang Dingbo sneered. I didn't. The herb gatherer, terrified, quickly defended himself loudly. If this crime was confirmed, he might be beaten to death. Did I ask you a question? Kuang Dingbo suddenly appeared in front of the herb gatherer and kicked him in the chest. The herb gatherer spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying toward a nearby table. With a muffled sound, Chen Fei caught the herb gatherer's body, cushioning the impact and saving his life. Despite Chen Fei's intervention, the herb gatherer continued to cough up blood from his mouth and nose. His survival now depended on his resilience. Kuang Dingbo's words and actions provoked the anger of the primordial sword sect disciples. The attack on the herb transport convoy had already infuriated them. Why, do you want to fight? Kuang Dingbo stared defiantly at the crowd, his eyes filled with a thirst for battle. If you can't explain yourselves properly as martial artists, then let's fight. The winner will naturally be in the right. What is it that you want? Wen Ziqian stepped forward, locking eyes with Kuang Dingbo. Guo Linchen and the other Marrow Tempering Realm senior brothers were absent, making Wen Ziqian the most senior disciple present. Kuang Dingbo seemed eager for a fight and had found a justification for it. Under normal circumstances, they could engage in battle. However, the problem was that they were outmatched. Setting aside Kuang Dingbo's attitude, his cultivation was in the Marrow Tempering Realm. He would have no problem contending against these Bone Tempering Realm cultivators, even if they had greater numbers. Sometimes, higher martial realms held the upper hand. Not to mention the sect disciples, who cultivated top-notch martial arts and cultivation techniques. I don't want anything. I'm here for justice, Kuang Dingbo chuckled, surveying his surroundings. How about this, each of us will choose a representative for a fight. And to make it more interesting, why not wager a few carts of medicinal herbs? Chen Fei's eyebrows raised slightly, realizing that the lengthy discussion was about these medicinal herbs. Considering that the sects had been assigned missions this time, failing to collect enough medicinal herbs would mean prolonging their stay on the mountain. While the mission wasn't complicated, it was tedious, and everyone wanted to return as soon as possible. It was only natural for Long Rainbow Sect to be interested in Primordial Sword Sect. After all, Long Rainbow Sect was undeniably stronger. You're only in the Marrow Tempering Realm, yet you dare to bully us in the Bone Tempering Realm. Wen Ziqian furrowed his brows. I can suppress my cultivation level, Kuang Dingbo glanced at Wen Ziqian and said. And if that's not enough, I can find a junior brother in the Bone Tempering Realm. We do have a few of them. Why would you need someone in the Bone Tempering Realm? It won't be a fair fight, a voice boomed as Guo Linchen approached from a distance. In a matter of moments, he had arrived at the encampment. Without uttering another word, Guo Linchen unsheathed a broadsword and clashed with Kuang Dingbo. Perfect timing. Kuang Dingbo burst into laughter. His long spear resembled a flood dragon thrashing through the sea as it collided with the edge of Guo Linchen's sword. However, Kuang Dingbo's expression soon changed as the tip of his spear bent under the force. With a muffled sound, Kuang Dingbo was involuntarily forced back. Guo Linchen was not about to let him off easily. His broadsword unleashed a scries of strikes, completely enveloping Kuang Dingbo. While spear wielders were typically formidable and highly effective in combat, it was Kuang Dingbo who found himself on the receiving end of a relentless beating. Guo Linchen's swordsmanship was bolder and more uninhibited than Kuang Dingbo's. Each strike thoroughly suppressed Kuang Dingbo, leaving him utterly defenseless. Kuang Dingbo slid back several steps before coming to a halt. Guo Linchen also took a step back, a scar appearing on his cheek. The two appeared to be evenly matched. To determine a victor, they would likely need to exert their full strength of potentially life and death battle. Congratulations, your tremendous strength and iron bones are on the verge of breaking through to the visceral tempering realm. Kuang Dingbo narrowed his eyes and addressed Guo Linchen, offering a cupped hand salute. Enough with the pleasantries. If you wish to fight, continue. Guo Linchen waved his hand, extending an olive branch. We're done for today. We'll compete another time. Kuang Dingbo hesitated briefly before uttering those words. He vanished from the spot in a flash. Eldest senior brother, you're finally back. How did it go? All the disciples crowded around Guo Linchen, their expressions filled with relief. Had Guo Linchen not returned in time, the situation would have been far more difficult to handle. Their cultivation levels were inferior, and they were at a disadvantage in terms of strength against other sects. They couldn't defeat them, and their words held no weight. It was a frustrating situation. I didn't make it in time. My two junior brothers are dead. Guo Linchen's voice grew somber. Though he hadn't spent much time with these junior brothers, they were still fellow sect members. Yet now, they were gone. The loss of those herbs paled in comparison. The disciples who had been smiling froze. While they had anticipated the news, it was still difficult to accept upon hearing it. This mission wasn't meant to be dangerous. It involved escorting medicinal herbs near the immortal Cloud City. Yet, 2 of their fellow disciples had already perished on the first day. Such losses were unacceptable. Senior Brother Guo, did you see who attacked? Wenzikian gritted his teeth and asked. Based on the evidence, it appears to have been the Divine Flame sect, Guo Linshan said in a deep voice. Chapter 80, Starry Night Sword and Shield. Chapter 80, Starry Night Sword and Shield. Divine Flame sect? Aren't they targeting the immortal Cloud Sword sect? Why did they suddenly attack us? The uproar among the group was palpable. Chen Fei's brow furrowed upon hearing the name Divine Flame sect. This sect was notorious in the vicinity of Immortal Cloud City and had a long-standing enmity with the Immortal Cloud Sword sect, making them bitter enemies. Known for their elusive nature, the Divine Flame sect lacked a fixed sect base, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. However, whenever they surfaced, they brought trouble upon the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. Despite the latter's attempts to encircle and annihilate them on multiple occasions, the Divine Flame sect always managed to rise again, seemingly impervious to destruction. It was as if the members of the Divine Flame sect were indomitable. The Divine Flame sect has always been unpredictable, Guo Linshan sighed and shook his head. In the eyes of the Divine Flame sect, the Primordial Sword sect could be considered an offshoot of the Immortal Cloud Sword sect. Killing some of their members was nothing out of the ordinary. If it weren't for the fact that the Divine Flame sect feared being surrounded by the other sects, it was likely that no other sect would live in peace either. A few moments later, the remaining Marrow Tempering Realm disciples returned, bringing back the bodies of the 2 fallen disciples. Senior Brother Guo, do you suspect the Long Rainbow sect's involvement? Chen Fei asked, taking a seat next to Guo Linshan. Soon after the attack on their convoy, members of the Long Rainbow sect had arrived to cause trouble, making the connection easy to establish. I cannot say for sure, Guo Linshan replied, shaking his head. However, the Long Rainbow sect has a tendency to exploit us during our missions. They see our Primordial Sword sect as an easy target. Guo Linshan's voice carried a bitter smile. While the Primordial Sword sect was not weak, it still fell short compared to the other 3 sects. The Immortal Cloud Sword sect had the privilege of first selection when it came to recruiting talented individuals near Immortal Cloud City. Those not chosen would naturally seek opportunities elsewhere. The Long Rainbow sect, in particular, only accepted individuals below the age of 13, and they were stronger than the Primordial Sword sect. Consequently, the remaining candidates often opted for the Long Rainbow sect. After multiple rounds of selection, the disciples who ended up in the Primordial Sword sect were indeed less talented compared to those of other sections. Although Kuang Dingbo had been arrogant, he had a point. Very few Long Rainbow sect disciples who were allowed to venture outside the sect due to their age had reached the Bone Tempering realm. They were a minority within a minority. However, the Primordial Sword sect boasted a considerable number of Bone Tempering realm inner sect disciples. Chen Fei belonged to the older generation, and there were many other youths like him in the Primordial Sword sect. Senior Brother Guo, I heard you have perfected the 5th stage of the origin connection technique. Chen Fei changed the topic. Yes, luckily I succeeded in doing so recently, Guo Linshan replied, glancing at Chen Fei and chuckling softly. I have you to thank for that. Your perfect cultivation of the 1st stage of the origin opening technique served as my motivation. Chen Fei was left speechless. He had only provoked himself. After this mission, I will prepare to break through to the visceral tempering realm. That will be my chance to compete for the legacy of a true disciple. Guo Linshan spoke with anticipation evident in his tone. As martial artists, Everyone aspired to cultivate profound martial arts techniques to advance their own realms, and Guo Linchen was no exception. Martial Uncle Qian. Martial Uncle Qian is here. A disciple suddenly exclaimed, catching the attention of Chen Fei and the others. They stood up and saw a middle-aged man standing in the encampment. He bore the appearance of a Confucian scholar, yet his countenance exuded an air of solemnity. Martial Uncle Qian. Guo Linchen hurriedly stepped forward and greeted him. Tell me everything that happened, leave nothing out, Qian Lindu spoke with a grave expression. Yes, Martial Uncle Qian. Guo Linchen proceeded to recount the events, detailing the attack on the convoy and the findings at the scene, including the presence of Kuang Dingbo from the Long Rainbow sect. After finishing his report, Guo Linchen fell silent. Qian Lindu furrowed his brow slightly, his expression serious. Continue gathering the medicinal herbs. I will personally escort the herbs several times, Qian Lindu declared solemnly. If the Divine Flame sect had indeed set their sights on them, the current disciples would be incapable of protecting themselves. Should the Divine Flame sect launch a major offensive, the disciples in this area would likely be in grave danger. However, the probability of this was relatively low. Unless they were directly confronting the immortal Cloud Sword sect, the Divine Flame sect rarely acted so ruthlessly against other sections. Agreeing with Qian Lindu's decision, Guo Linchen nodded. Qian Lindu then left the encampment, intending to visit the other sects and ascertain whether they had also been attacked or if their sect alone was targeted. Night descended, and the herb gatherers returned. Given the reduced visibility and increased danger, they ceased their herb-picking activities for the night. Around the rising bonfire, hushed conversations filled the air. Meanwhile, Chen Fei practiced his movement technique in the nearby forest, his long sword flashing incessantly. Seated on the ground, Guo Linchen observed Chen Fei cultivating in the distance, nodding approvingly. Such dedication made Guo Linchen feel somewhat inferior. Previously, Guo Linchen had heard rumors that Chen Fei secluded himself in his room to cultivate and seldom indulged in leisurely activities. Initially, he thought the rumors might be exaggerated, but witnessing it now, he felt they might have actually been an understatement. It's just that his foundation is somewhat lacking. Life can be so unfair, Guo Linchen muttered to himself. Some individuals possessed exceptional talent, easily surpassing others without much effort. Meanwhile, some, despite diligent and tireless work, would see little change in their results. However, there was little one could do about it, that was the nature of the world. Consequently, some people resigned themselves to their fate, living their lives aimlessly. Others, however, refused to admit defeat and persevered in their efforts, undeterred by minimal progress. They did not entertain thoughts of giving up, leaving the outcome in the hands of fate. Fortunately, Junior Brother has a good grasp of the origin connection technique, so his advancement to the visceral tempering stage should proceed smoothly. Moreover, his comprehension is not lacking, suggesting potential for further progress in the future, Guo Linchen murmured softly. He closed his eyes and began circulating the origin connection technique, aiming to reach the 5th level of perfection. Breaking through to the visceral tempering realm would then become a matter of course, with no obstacles impeding his progress. As the night grew deeper, Chen Fei's figure continued to flash. In a sudden moment, he vanished from his original position, reappearing on a distant treetop. Cultivation method, soul-chasing step, great completion. A smile graced Chen Fei's face. He had finally perfected this movement technique to its pinnacle. The perfected soul-chasing step did not disappoint, significantly augmenting Chen Fei's speed, living up to its name. Compared to before, his swiftness had increased several-fold, and he truly embodied the title of Soul Chaser. Chen Fei gazed at the long sword in his hand. Standing on the treetop, his sword emanated a dazzling light, seemingly forming countless shields enveloping his body. With agile footwork, Chen Fei's body traversed the treetops, effortlessly crushing any leaves or branches that approached him. A sword light erupted from the shield of swords, instantly leveling a tree crown several meters away. Cultivation technique, Starry Night Sword, Great Completion. Chapter 81, Chapter 81, Pounced. Chapter 81, Pounced. Qianfei couldn't help but smile as his face lit up. However, instead of resting, he immediately returned to the encampment and sat down to continue his cultivation, crossing his legs. He still had unfinished inner strength cultivation tasks and needed to improve his proficiency in the second level of the origin connection technique. Resting was not part of his plan. He was determined to stay up all night. The next morning, the herb gatherers resumed their work, and the disciples dispersed to supervise them. The morning passed without any other incidents, and the encampment was now filled with carriages overflowing with freshly picked medicinal herbs. It was crucial to transport them back to Immortal Cloud City promptly for processing. The Immortal Cloud Sword sect held a superior stance towards other sects when it came to pill refining, which meant they had stricter requirements for medicinal ingredients. Daily transportation of medicinal herbs was therefore necessary. Martial Uncle Qian, everything is ready. Guo Linchen approached Qian Lindu and whispered. You stay here, and I'll bring a few marrow tempering disciples with me. Qian Lindu nodded. Yesterday, Qian Lindu had visited the other sects to inquire. It turned out that not all sects had been attacked, only the Big Dipper Tower had suffered an assault. Due to their cultivation technique, members of the Big Dipper Tower were known for their hot temperaments. Only those who had reached the high realm could keep them calm. Therefore, the Big Dipper Tower had already launched a vigorous search for the attackers. They were determined to find them and perhaps prevent any members of the Divine Flame sect from showing up that day. In less time than it took to brew a cup of tea, the carriages were prepared and set off. Disguised as an ordinary disciple, Qian Lindu joined the convoy while the rest of the people in the encampment carried on with their usual tasks. An hour later, a messenger pigeon arrived, and Guo Linchen retrieved the message attached to its foot. Senior brother Guo, what's the situation? A few disciples couldn't help but surround him, eager for news. The convoy has safely arrived at Immortal Cloud City. Martial Uncle Qian and the others didn't encounter any attacks. Guo Linchen raised his head and replied. That's good. The disciples nodded, their emotions mixed. On one hand, they hoped that such attacks wouldn't happen again, as casualties were a possibility. On the other hand, they secretly wished that members of the Divine Flame sect would continue to come. With Qian Lindu present, there might be a chance to avenge the two disciples who had lost their lives the day before. Qianfei happened to be nearby and noticed the calm expressions of Guo Linchen and the others. It seemed that nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The collection mission proceeded smoothly, and the convoy was no longer attacked. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. Qian Lindu had asked the other sects, and they hadn't encountered any more attacks. It appeared that the incident on the first day was merely a surprise attack by the Divine Flame sect. However, the Divine Flame sect was known for such tactics, often launching sudden attacks without warning. Sometimes, when the situation seemed favorable, and others expected the Divine Flame sect to continue their pursuit, they would suddenly withdraw. At other times, even when they were on the brink of defeat, the Divine Flame sect would go berserk and send their members to their deaths. It was quite puzzling. Under the night sky, Qianfei sat in meditation with his legs crossed. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his arm. Opening his eyes, he examined his arm and noticed that the gangrene was becoming active. Standing up, Qianfei scanned his surroundings, but there was nothing unusual, and the gangrene activity was still low. However, Qianfei was unfamiliar with such phenomena, so he decided to report it. Senior brother Guo. Qianfei walked over to Guo Linchen and called out in a low voice. What's wrong? Guo Linchen opened his eyes and looked at Chen Fei curiously. There might be something evil nearby. Should we inform Martial Uncle Qian? Evil. Guo Linchen stood up in surprise. Chen Fei nodded and extended his arm, revealing a faint black mark. Is that gangrene? Guo Linchen recognized it and finally understood the situation. Yes, I was marked by an evil creature. Later on, I discovered that this gangrene poison is very sensitive to unusual auras, so I left a trace of it on my body, Chen Fei explained briefly. Junior brother, you're quite fortunate. That evil thing didn't target you? Guo Linchen asked curiously. No, that monster had a larger target, Chen Fei shook his head, thinking about Pingying County. Observing Chen Fei's expression, Guo Linchen refrained from asking further questions. After a moment of silence, he said, since your gangrene is reacting, there must be some evil things nearby, but they shouldn't be powerful. For the safety of the encampment, we'll investigate. If the danger becomes too great, we'll retreat. As Guo Linchen spoke, he took out a red candle from the bag behind him and added, with this, even if we encounter something evil, we can hold out for a while. Senior brother, I have my own method as well, Chen Fei looked at the red candle and produced one from his sleeve. Haha, then we have nothing to fear, Guo Linchen couldn't help but laugh. Chen Fei nodded, and they both began searching based on the intensity of the gangrene's reaction. The gangrene's response was indeed weak. Compared to the evil Chen Fei had encountered before, it was much milder. This is why Chen Fei agreed to take the initiative to investigate. They moved cautiously, alternating between walking and stopping. The evil presence seemed to be on the move as well. Before long, they had traversed nearly 10 miles. No need to pursue further. That evil thing is either passing by or someone is controlling it. Besides, at this distance, it would be challenging for them to pose a threat to our encampment, Guo Linchen halted. It wasn't necessary to kill the evil, as long as it didn't endanger them, there was no need to take any risks. Chen Fei nodded, about to speak when he suddenly stopped. His ears twitched as a faint voice reached his ears from a distance. Chen Fei turned to Guo Linchen, who had clearly heard the sound as well. Senior brother, is that the temporary encampment of some sect? No, it's in a shady area over there. This time, there are no herb-growing sites or sects stationed there, Guo Linchen shook his head. Could it be the Divine Flame sect? Chen Fei suggested suddenly. Guo Linchen's eyes brightened. That was highly probable. However, if they wanted confirmation, they would have to investigate further. Junior brother, your cultivation level isn't sufficient. Go back and find Martial Uncle Qian, Guo Linchen looked into the distance and spoke in a deep voice. Senior Guo, do you want someone to go and check? It's too dangerous. Chen Fei couldn't help but voice his concern. It's all right. I'll simply observe from a distance without taking any risks. We need to understand the situation, otherwise, it will be even more dangerous when Martial Uncle Qian and the others arrive, Guo Linchen reassured him with a smile. Chen Fei opened his mouth to protest but eventually nodded. It was the most appropriate course of action. Determined not to waste any time, Chen Fei sprinted back in the direction they came from. The sooner they returned and informed the others, the less danger Guo Linchen would be in. Chen Fei's feet flew like the wind. However, after running a few miles, his expression suddenly changed. The gangrene that had been dormant began to show activity once again. Another evil creature was nearby. Moreover, the intensity of the mark's activity was increasing. The creature was heading straight for Chen Fei's location. Chapter 82, Chapter 82, Bottomless. Chapter 82, Bottomless. Chen Fei cursed inwardly as he felt the sudden increase in strangeness on the mountain. It seemed that not just one but two evil creatures had appeared simultaneously. Knowing that he couldn't afford to encounter the evil creature, Chen Fei pushed aside the thoughts of the encounter and focused on running back to the sect's encampment to report the news. After running for a mile, Chen Fei felt the activity of the mark on his arm decrease, indicating that the evil creature was moving further away and couldn't catch up to him. Relieved, Chen Fei wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Dealing with evil's unpredictable abilities was always unnerving, and it reminded him of his own cultivation level, which still had room for improvement. With his powerful blood and chi, ordinary evil creatures couldn't come close to him. Surveying the terrain around him, Chen Fei estimated that he had covered about half the distance back to the encampment. Another 5 miles, and he would reach safety. "Young master, why are you in such a hurry on this long night?" a seductive voice echoed, and a figure appeared on a hill, blocking Chen Fei's path. Startled, Chen Fei realized that the mark on his arm hadn't reacted to this presence. It wasn't the evil creature he had encountered earlier. With this realization, Chen Fei quickly changed his appearance to resemble Su Wangliang from Apricot Fen City. "Young master, I feel a slight pain here. Could you come and take a look?" Shi Suekin's voice was enticing, and she casually revealed her shoulder, exposing her fair skin. A low murmur echoed in Chen Fei's ears, stirring up desire within him. His eyes clouded over, and he unconsciously started walking toward Shi Suekin. "Young master is so kind, unlike the others who didn't lift a finger to save me. I appreciate your help in advance," Shi Suekin said, bowing slightly with a charming smile. In Chen Fei's eyes, it was the most beautiful smile in the world, capable of making him brave any danger. Bzzt. Suddenly, the clear heart formula kicked in, and Chen Fei's mind regained clarity. Although the seductive murmurs still lingered, with the help of the clear heart formula, Chen Fei was no longer ensnared. Chen Fei felt a cold sweat forming on his back. Not only was he bewitched, but his previous appearance had already partially reverted. If he had awakened a moment later, his true identity would have been exposed. Without changing his steps or expression, Chen Fei maintained the same blank gaze, and the frequency of his appearance changes remained consistent. A while later, Chen Fei transformed his appearance again, resembling Kuang Dingbo from the Long Rainbow sect. "What a handsome appearance, young master. Why did you pretend to be an old man earlier?" Shi Suekin laughed softly, her laughter so alluring that even Chen Fei couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. A greedy and fanatical look appeared on his face, and he quickened his pace. Soon, Chen Fei reached Shi Suekin's side. Shi Suekin raised her right index finger slightly, and a sharp light glimmered at the tip. "Young master, it's late. Did you discover anything while you were wandering outside?" Shi Suekin leaned forward, and Chen Fei instinctively lowered his head, catching a glimpse of a bottomless abyss. His breathing grew heavier. Regardless of anything else, based on Shi Suekin's figure alone, Chen Fei felt that the seductive emotions he experienced were spot on. A few fellow disciples sensed something amiss and went out to investigate. Moreover, a struggle appeared on Chen Fei's face as if he wanted to break free from the enchantment. "Young master, take your time." "I'm listening," Shi Suekin said, looking straight into Chen Fei's eyes. Her eyes were as dark as an abyss, captivating anyone who gazed into them. "There's also a junior brother. He's heading. Veins bulged on Chen Fei's forehead, and his trembling left hand rose as if he wanted to point at a specific location. "Where?" Shi Suekin's body leaned forward involuntarily, and the darkness in her eyes deepened. The clear heart formula surged, forcefully interrupting Shi Suekin's enchantment. She couldn't help but groan. In Chen Fei's eyes, everything around him seemed to slow down. Shi Suekin's head tilted slightly backward, her hair fluttering in the air. However, her right hand instinctively swung towards Chen Fei's head, attempting to crush his neck. With a muffled sound, Chen Fei's starry night sword blocked Shi Suekin's attack. The immense force sent Chen Fei flying backward, unable to withstand the impact. "How dare you hurt me? I'll kill you." Shi Suekin screamed with fury. Chen Fei didn't even have time to withdraw the dagger before witnessing Shi Suekin's hand swiftly approaching his head. Chen Fei's starry night sword clashed with Shi Suekin's attack, but the force was overwhelming, and his entire body was forced backward. You think you can escape? Shi Suekin consumed a pill and tended to her wound, trying to stabilize it with her strength. Logically, Shi Suekin needed rest due to her injuries. However, she couldn't bear to let Chen Fei escape so easily. If she didn't kill him today, she wouldn't be able to accept it, no matter the circumstances. Part 5 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.